If you like the story, you can support the author on Patreon. Link is in the description. Additionally, if you would like to request novels and access my Google Drive where I have 200 plus audiobooks, then you can join my Patreon. Link is also provided in the description.
Chapter 71. We've spent the last 2 days in the ground, and we're running out of supplies, and if the mother doesn't go hunting today, I may have to kill her tomorrow. As I was thinking about that, the mother's glow started to go down the steep slope of the den. At last, she is going hunting, guys, get ready. After she was out of my 5 kilometers sensing range, we started going for the den, but I left the wolf pup and Barris behind since they couldn't climb a steep slope. When I approached the slope, I turned my head up and measured its height. Shadow cats are excellent climbers, and it's not hard for them to climb such a steep slope every time. If I were an average person, it would be impossible for me to climb here, but I used formodagon, mold earth, to create hollows on the slope, and a simple ladder was formed. The moment I reached the top of the slope, the cub noticed me and fled into the den. It wasn't hard to get in by crouching since this den was big enough for the mother to get in. The cub started to growl and screech when she realized I was behind it, but the mother was too far away to hear it. It was trying to run from side to side as I approached it and was very agile, and I didn't have time to deal with it. Let-a-gone, snare. It suddenly froze, and I grabbed it quickly. It was the size of a house cat. I tied the cub's feet, immediately descended the ladder, and headed to Barris. I went into the alcove and closed the wall. I had to bond with this baby instantly and get away from here before the mother returned. I placed the shadowcat cub on my lap, holding it steady with one hand while placing the other on its head and starting the bonding spell. I was getting better at this every time I made a bond. And that connection took about half an hour and ended smoothly. The only result I didn't expect was that it took up almost half as much soul space as I thought. If my mana went up a bit more, I could make another bond, and I decided that my next bond would be the wolf pup. To finish the bonding, I have to give you a name. What should I name you? Sith. Yeah, I'm going to name you Sith. The second I named her, mana started to go inside her. I could feel her negative emotions about me starting to turn positive, and she rubbed her head against my chest. Then I started rubbing her head, and she began to growl with a soft sound. It feels like how a cat would purr, but not that cute, and it was wilder of a sound. Did our Lady Sith start to like me? But we don't have time to play here. Need to go. We don't want to hurt your mother if she comes back. When I talked about her mother, she started to think about her and got sad, but when I said we needed to go, her sad thought was replaced by a determination to leave here. In Annie's Motu, Traceless Movement, Valhen Kelly, the aspect of cat, Valhen Tor, the aspect of ox. After buffing, I put Sith and Barris inside the training space and started running. After 2 days of travel, we were out of the mountain range and returned to the barren forests beyond the wall. We were slowly making our way to the wall. Of course, even on the way back, I was constantly searching for a dire wolf using promodines, locate animals, but I had no luck. POV Gornold 3 WLDNG Warg. Our raid party was coming in on a failed raid. This raid had started so well that our group of 40 men had easily crossed the gorge under cover of darkness and looted a village on the other side of the wall. We were returning with our loot, but this time the damned crows were waiting for us at the gorge and ambushed us. We gave those crows hell but lost half of our men. I even lost my wolf, and we had to leave our loot behind to fight. We at least killed as many crows as we lost, but I had to find a new wolf. I saw a black eagle in the distant sky as we went through the forest, and it looked almost as big as my eagle. Should I get that one? What is it? A black eagle. I'm thinking of getting it. He looked up in the direction I was showing and said, "It doesn't look like an eagle. Are you sure? Something that big, what could it be if not an eagle, and it is a black one? They are so rare." I reached out and tried to take control of it, but the second I touched its consciousness, I was pushed back and fell on top of my ass. One of my men helped me get up and asked, "What happened?" "The eagle belongs to someone else, and that warg pushed me out." "Of course, we are going to follow that eagle. I want it, and I'm going to have it." POV MC. We were going back the way we came. Poe, Erebus, and their murders were on the lookout as usual. I suddenly felt that Erebus was getting very angry, and I had a feeling that he was under attack. I immediately contacted him. "Erebus, are you okay? What's going on?" "Ermer, someone tried to touch my consciousness, and I pushed him back. It felt similar to your connection, but he was more aggressive, so I didn't like it and kicked his ass back." It felt similar to the familiar connection. Is it a warg? It must be. It is either a warg or a green seer. Old Nan always said there were wargs among the wildlings, and it looks like it is true. "Don't come back to us yet, I don't want them to know where we are." "Promodines, locate animals, Human. I could sense them from about 5 kilometers, 3 miles, away. When the magic took effect they were between me and the wall, so I changed my direction to go around them. I started heading southeast, and they changed direction and continued to follow us. Erebus, can they still see you? No, I'm flying close to the trees as you want, they can't see me from afar unless they're flying. I suddenly realized what was happening, and I connected to Erebus again and shared his sight. Is there any bird following you? He started looking around and found an eagle following him from a distance. Can you kill it without getting hurt yourself? When I asked that, I could feel the fighting spirit inside him start to flare up. But I felt something else too. I could feel he was circulating mana in his body, but it wasn't moving around his heart in a circular motion like the mana heart. It was moving along his veins. Every time his heart pumped with the blood, mana would move too and feed his body with power. Chapter 72. Erebus first started to rise to gain altitude and slowed down to keep track of the eagle, and it could not immediately understand what Erebus was trying to do, but when Erebus suddenly turned and dived towards it, it realized what Erebus was doing, and it tried to gain altitude too, but it was too late. As Erebus's body was fed with mana, his speed and muscle strength increased, and even his feathers began to acquire an unnatural black glow. It was moving towards the eagle like a bullet. I could see the eagle's white eyes now. It was a bizarre sight. Erebus and the eagle clashed. They were almost the same size, but the eagle was a bit bigger than Erebus, and the fight lasted only a few seconds. The eagle tried to get its giant talons and sharp beak into Erebus' body, but it failed to cause anything but draw a few drops of blood. All its talons and beak managed to do was break his skin a bit. On the contrary, when Erebus grabbed the eagle with his talons, he sliced the eagle like a knife through butter. He almost ripped the eagle's head off. POV Gornold 3 Sn, WLDNG Warg. The other warg must not be as powerful as I thought, because I don't think he was aware of us following him. The black eagle was still going in a straight line, and I think it was going back to its master, but suddenly, he started to climb up. Then it charged at me. As it was getting close, I started to see it more clearly, and it didn't look like an eagle, but what other bird could be this big other than an eagle? It was black all over, other than 2 white patches on its wings, and had a straight peak. It looks almost like a raven. It can't be. I don't know what you are, but your master must be overestimating your power if he is making you charge at an eagle bigger than you. Pitiful beast, after I kill your master, I'm going to look after you better than him. When the black bird came close to me, it started to have a black hue all over it. It looked like it was encased in subtle black flames. The moment we clashed, I tried to claw and bite the place that wouldn't permanently damage the bird, but my eagle couldn't get past its skin. How is this possible? Then an agonizing pain struck my neck, and my connection was lost. Ah! Gornold! Horin, Benir, hold him! He must have lost his beast. Hold him still until he calms down. It was an unbearable pain, both physically and emotionally. Losing a beast is like losing a part of yourself. If the beast dies while you are warging, you will feel the beast passing away. If the warg is weak-willed, it could even cause a warg to go insane. If you are not warging with it, it is easier to order them to make a suicide attack. I never thought my eagle would die in one strike. I stood up with difficulty and was bubbling with anger. We are going to hunt down that warg. I don't care if I have to chase him to the end of the north. I will hunt him down. Benir said. How do you hope to follow him? You don't even have a flying beast left anymore. All you have left is your bear. How are you going to chase a flying beast with a bear? It doesn't matter. I will tame his blackbird when we catch him. I have already touched that bird's consciousness. If it is not too far away from me, I will be able to follow it, and it will lead us to its warg. Horin asked. What if he has a bigger warband with him? What are we going to do then? POV Horin the brute. Things were starting to go wrong. First, we lost our loot and half our men, and now we were going after a warg. We have no idea how strong he is. Gornold has led us to many victories and is one of the strongest wargs I know, but he's not acting like himself this time. Ever since our defeat at the gorge, he's been making very irritable and impulsive decisions. For old God's sake, he lost his beast without even being able to do anything to the other bird, and he still wanted to attack recklessly. I wonder if we should try to find another warband or, better yet, try to find the so-called king beyond the wall. This man appeared about 4 years ago out of nowhere and started to become a force that cannot be underestimated. By gathering the fragmented and small clans, he calls himself king beyond the wall, but still can't compete with other big clans. He may have called himself king, but in the eyes of many free folks, he is a Magnar at best. Nah, if I join any of these, I have to start back from the lowest level in the group, and I'd rather be the head of the dog than the tail of a wolf. In time we will find new men and become a sizable warband again. POV MC. Even though we killed the eagle, the 20-man wildling group was still after me, and I had no clue how they were following us. I wonder if wargs have a similar skill to promodines, locate animals. There were about 2 kilometers between us, but they were coming at me as if they could see me. I changed my direction a few more times, and they were still after me, and seeing that too, it was apparent they knew my position for sure, but how did they do it? If you want to die so badly, I will give you what you want. They kept approaching me while I was planning their arrival, and this time there was an ambush method I wanted to try. This method came to my mind while waiting for Mother Shadowcat to leave. First of all, I made a pit using Formodagon, mold earth, where the wolf cub, Sith, Barris, and I could fit comfortably. Erebus and Poe, you won't make any physical contact when the enemies come, especially Erebus. You're not ready for melee with humans yet, so your only mission is to distract them, make loud noises, and do fake dives. As for you, Poe, you will not engage in melee either, but I want you to use your magic to attack from a distance. It took 10 mana to dig the hole and close the top. They were almost here, so I started buffing Poe, Erebus, and myself with STR, SPD, and stamina, and I even used a Ludogelmio, warding wind, that will deflect arrows. All those cost me 60 more mana. And I was left with 100 mana. This will be more than enough to deal with 20 men in an ambush. Chapter 73. Erebus, Poe, and their murders perched on the surrounding trees, watching the approaching wildlings. Since I shared the sight of Erebus, I could see them too. I used the locate animal spell to find humans, so I didn't realize they had a polar bear with them until they came into view. I knew there was at least one warg among them, and it must have been the man on the bear. After getting a little closer, the wildling warg spotted Erebus and pointed at him. There it is. Hello beautiful, we finally found you. Ermer, why is this weirdo calling me a beauty? I'm not a beauty, I'm a handsome raven. Did you find the warg of these birds? No trace of him. How come there's no trace? Literally, there are no traces here. It is like nobody was here. There are no footprints. How can a human move without leaving any footprints? We have no idea where he went. There's something wrong here. Wargs never act on their own. Every warg has men protecting them. Maybe he is not as strong a warg as we thought, and he might be one skin, and it might just be strong enough to tie in with a bird. Then the only thing he is suitable for would be scouting. Do you think someone that weak could tame a bird that big? What the heck is that? Anyway, it is not an eagle, and I have never seen anything like that. It almost resembles a raven but is at least 3 to 4 times bigger than usual ones. Gornold, on top of his bear, got closer to the tree Erebus was on and said, I think it is a raven, and I have no idea how he got that big, but I really want it. I can't get control of it before killing the warg. While I was listening to them, I couldn't learn how they tracked me, so my only other option was to leave one of them alive, preferably the warg. I readied 2 Teganspy, Earth Spike, spells, touched the barrow's wall, and then sent the spells to the closest ones. 2 earth spikes as thick as an adult's arm grew out of the ground and skewered them. Ah! Ah! Both spells hit the men right in the stomach and made a big hole in their stomachs. They didn't die right away, and they passed out from shock or blood loss as they writhed and screamed in pain, trying to get rid of the spikes that stabbed them. I readied 2 more Teganspy, Earth Spike, and sent them. This time one of the spikes managed to stab 2 wildlings at once. 5 down, 15 to go. Poe, start bombarding them first, aim for the bear. POV Gornold Threesen. I was happy when I realized the warg didn't have a warband and thought it would be easy to kill him and steal his tame. This must be a nightmare because what I've seen makes no sense, and what's happening before my eyes can be nothing but a nightmare. First giant rock spikes started coming out of the ground and nailed half of our men. Each died while screaming in agony. Then a raven that was smaller than the blackbird we were following but 2 to 3 times larger than an ordinary raven dived towards me. Something translucent started to cover this raven, and it rose just 3 to 4 meters from me, but it threw something transparent and whirling toward me. Before I knew what it was, this transparent thing fell right on my bear's head, and I flew over my bear and fell to the ground with the impact of this collision. This transparent thing had stuck my bear straight to the ground like a giant hand, and I could see it turning and pressing harder. My bear couldn't move until this transparent thing wore off and disappeared. When it disappeared, the white fur on the bear's neck was dyed crimson with blood, and that thick bear fur seemed torn as if it had been grated. My bear was still alive, but he had no strength to fight. That damned bird did the same thing to 4 of my men too. But it was much worse for them. All of them turned into mashed meat, and while it was attacking us, everyone with a bow was attacking back at it, but none of our arrows managed to hit this bird. Every arrow that got close to it would veer off at the last seconds. The rest of my men were starting to flee in all directions. 15 men were dead in perhaps a minute, and we didn't have the slightest idea who had attacked us yet. Suddenly the ground split open, and a boy emerged from under the ground with his arms, upper body and head wrapped in a bark-looking thing. Behind the boy was a large black dog. The one responsible for this massacre was a 10 to 11 named day child. This can't be real, this must be a nightmare. He approached my stunned bear with slow steps and said, "Sorry big fella, I will end your misery. Zagan Jelms, call lightning." Suddenly, even though there were no clouds, a bolt of lightning struck my bear. And it stopped moving. Then he turned to me and raised his hand and said, "Enricio, entangle." Tree roots started to come out of the ground, and then they began to wrap around me. I could not move a muscle. This has to be a nightmare, this can't be real. How is he doing all this, controlling the earth, lightning and plants? Then with an emotionless voice, he said, "How did you manage to follow me? There should have been no trace behind me. I will painlessly send you on your next journey if you tell me how you managed to follow me, or you could choose not to answer my question, and after long torture, you will still tell me what I want. It is your choice, a painless death or an excruciating one, which is it?" "I wasn't tracking you, I was tracking him." I pointed at the black bird. "How? He was flying close to the trees, and you don't have any other flying beast. Aren't you a warg? How do you not know that? If a warg is powerful enough and touched that beast's consciousness, we can track that beast if it is not too far away. So, this is one of the differences between a warg and me." He sighed deeply and said, "I didn't even want to kill you, I really am a peace-loving guy. Of course, as long as it suits me, I even changed my course, but you guys kept coming at me with a death wish, so I had to oblige and give you your rewards. One last question, if you can give me a satisfactory answer for this one, I might even consider sparing your life." Hearing this, a momentary hope arose in me, but when I listened to his question, this hope completely died. Now I understood what this monster was doing here. "Where can I find dire wolves?" "They don't have a specific location, they are roaming beasts, and they are really rare. They are not territorial animals as they are constantly on the move, nor do they roam in large packs like normal wolves. They usually travel in pairs, they only have more than 2 in their packs when rearing offspring. Usually, when they come to a region, they mix with the normal wolf pack there and then continue roaming, so it's all up to the old gods to meet a dire wolf." I had resigned to my fate. "Sorry I couldn't be helpful." "Don't worry, my friend, your answer confirmed many things I already suspected." He started smiling. "Is he going to spare me?" Zagan Jelms, call lightning. Chapter 74. After sending the warg on his final journey, I took one last look around. Killing people is getting more and more normal every day. I can't decide yet if this is a good thing or a bad thing. At that moment, my eyes fell on the polar bear, and I slapped my own head and said, "You're an idiot, I knew I was forgetting something. Why didn't I ask where to find polar bears before I killed the goddamn warg?" Shrugs his shoulders. "At least I've found one of the animals I was looking for. I'll come back another time even if it's the last thing I do and I have to search every corner of these frozen lands. I'll definitely find a dire wolf." I returned to the burrow, took Sith and the wolf cub that were sleeping in their basket, and went back out. Few of the wildlings had run away, but I didn't want to waste my time hunting them. I could send Poe after them, but it looked like 5 wind bombs were her limit right now. I could feel the exhaustion coming from her, so I decided to be on my way to the wall. After a week of travel, I was at the south of the wall, and 1 day's journey to the Queen's Crown. I decided to make camp. Now I have to set my course. Do I go east or go west to the northern mountains? I could visit the mountain clans first. They are not that welcoming to outsiders, but I have the pass Lord Stark gave me, so I think they will be welcoming to me. Once again, I used the Formotigan, Mold Earth, spell to create a small barrow for all of us. This spell had become the most useful among all my spells in my journey. In the winter weather, I looked at the wolf cub and Sith sleeping near the makeshift fireplace I created with the spell. I threw a few pieces of rabbits in front of them and watched their little noses start to move slowly and smack and lick their mouths as they slept. A few minutes later, with their eyes half open and drowsily, both started sniffing the air. Realizing the meat in front of them, they lazily reached for it without getting up, grabbed it between their 2 front paws, and began to gnaw at it. "I can just keep calling you Wolf Cub, what should I name you?" Something that should fit a she-wolf." Fen. She tilted her head as if trying to understand me. "Yes, it is not that good, right?" How about Sky?" Without any reaction, she continued to gnaw her flesh. "Yeah, you're right, it's not a name that suits you at all. How about Laika?" She yelped in a shrill voice. "Laika?" She yelped again. "Okay, Laika, it is." Like always, a mana fluctuation occurred when I named her, then Barris raised his head and said, "Master, you know she can't understand you, right? She is not like us. You don't say thanks, I didn't know that. You are welcome. Imu got out of my neck and said. Varys, you are an idiot. Master, isn't he really thanking you? Varys asked in confusion. Master, are you not? I smiled and said. Yes, I'm not. Varys, it is called sarcasm. While scratching his head, I said. You will learn in time. Every passing year, they were getting more intelligent. Then why are you talking to her even though you know she doesn't understand you? We humans sometimes do that with animals, don't worry about it. I was getting close to Clan Wool's mountain settlement. The settlement was quite large, but it consisted of wooden houses built discreetly into the mountainside, and at the bottom of the valley, small farmlands were dimly visible under the snow. Only one road led to the settlement, and on that road was a wooden wall and gate. As I approached the gate, one of the guards called out. Who are you, dwarf? What business do you have here? Did they think I was an adult? Yes, that is the logical thought process. Nobody in their right mind would think a 10-name-day-old boy would come here in the winter years. I took out my pass and showed it to them. I have a pass from Lord Stark. Could we please talk in a warmer place? Reveal your face first. I untied my scarf and looked at the guard. The guard was surprised for a moment and said. You are a child, for old God's sake. What the hell are you doing in this god-forsaken air? Open the gate. Take the boy inside and call for the wool. They took me to the most prominent structure in the settlement, which was a 3-story wooden and round building. Hugo Wool was a big man, around 2 meters, 66 feet, tall. He had the build of a strongman, a big belly, and thick arms. His long hair and beard were disheveled, and his face was stern and hardened by all the winters he lived through. Child, what are you doing here in this wintertime? Why did Lord Stark send a child in such a perilous season? And who are you? Lord Stark didn't send me, and my name is Drazzle. Then why do you carry his sigil? I raise the pass and shake it. This Lord Stark gave this to me so it will help me on my journey around the north in case I needed help or a place to stay. Then, whatever you need from us, Clan Wool will try to provide it. If it is Lord Stark's will, it shall be done. I don't need anything other than a warm bath and a place to sleep tonight. Then, little lordling, you will have what you want. He nodded to one of the men standing beside him, and the man immediately left the room. I am not a noble Lord Wool, I just came from a knight's family. I am nothing but humble small folk. Just drop the Lord talk, call me the Wool like everyone else. I have seen many humble small folk, but not many of them can look at me without breaking eye contact, and I have never seen small folk climb up the mountain to come here just to get a bath and a place to stay. You might be common at birth, but you are definitely not just any other humble small folk. Why are you here, boy? When I told him why I came here this winter, he almost collapsed with laughter. Ha. You mean the only reason you climbed this frozen mountain is that you were curious about mountain clans and would keep traveling all north? That still doesn't explain why Lord Stark gave you his sigil. I don't think Quiet Wolf doesn't have the guts to pull out another bastard, so I'm sure you are not his. Why are you that important he would give you his sigil? Of course, you don't have to answer this if you don't want to. You have his sigil, we will provide you what you want even if you don't answer. Lord Stark appreciates my skills a little, as I have shown some mastery in the use of swords and bows, and as a reward, he gave me his sigil so that I would not be troubled in my journey. Chapter 75. How good can you be with sword and bow that Lord Stark gave you such an honor? If you hadn't come here by yourself, I would have said you are just a babe who just got out of his mother's milk, but I can tell you have balls. I have some talent, and I'm more powerful than I look. Then let's test your talent. The Wool was a big man and the strongest man I had ever seen. His STR was 11, he could basically crush me like a melon. Chief Wool, I couldn't compete with your strength. Rahaha. Of course you can't. If a 10-name-old babe could compete with me in strength, then I wouldn't have a face to show in public. I just want to know how good you are. Okay, if this is Chief Wool's wish, then I can only accept it. He took a big gulp from his drink and said. That is more like it, let's go somewhere with more open space. All the men inside started to shout in approval. Yeah. We left the building and went to a small open field under the snow with trees around it. Other men brought wooden weapons, which they used for mock battles. What do you want to use first, sword or bow? I took a short bow and a quiver of cloth-tipped arrows. Okay, then, how much distance do you want? 30 steps, 40 steps. This time I laughed, but I was laughing because of annoyance. Haha, you are underestimating me a bit too much, Chief Wool. I could even beat Arthur Dane in 40 steps. Everyone started laughing with all their might. You are an amusing boy, and I like you, but you need to learn some humility too. One of the men from the crowd shouted. Chief, are you the one saying that? All the men around us started to laugh again. Then let's do this. The first clash will be a warm-up round, and we will go for real. With a low voice, I casted my usual buffs, then we stood face to face, about 40 paces apart. Chief Wool held a two-handed wooden mace in one hand and a large round shield in the other. There was no way I could physically compete with him, but Chief Wool was as slow as he was strong. His speed was only 75, but my stats were 8 STR and 82 SPD with buffs. I drew 4 arrows from my quiver, an arrow between each finger, took a deep breath, and prepared myself. POV the WULL. In a second, the boy's gaze turned to ice, and this boy had killed before. I was sure of it. I started laughing at myself. Maybe the boy was right. I underestimated him. He pulled out 4 arrows from his quiver. I've never seen an archer hold their arrows like that. As soon as one of the men gave the signal to start, the boy had already put his arrow in the bow and aimed. I could hear the whistling of arrows. One after the other, and then, one by one, they started hitting my shield. It was as if I was under the fire of 4 archers. This boy, he was really good with the bow, but as long as I hid well behind the shield, it would be fine. I was closing the distance quickly. If I were in his place, I would try to slow my opponent down with the next volley by shooting it toward his feet. I was lowering my shield a little and checking where he was aiming with the corner of my eye, and the moment I lowered the shield, an arrow bounced off the tip of the shield and passed tangentially over my head. To be honest, at that moment, I felt a cold sweat run down my neck. He constantly changed his target, one arrow shot toward my head and the next toward my feet. I couldn't keep up with him anymore, and about 15 to 20 steps were between us. I was trying to zigzag and be unpredictable, but it was like his arrows were following me. He fired almost 15 arrows, and none of them hit anything other than my shield, but if I weren't fast enough, they would have hit my face and feet multiple times already. Just as I was changing direction, one of his arrows hit me in my ankle. I stumbled, and at this very moment, another hit me right in the middle of my forehead. The boy said, "Thank you for the warm-up, Chief Wool. Should we go for real this time?" Nobody was laughing now because they saw I couldn't get close to him, and the worst part was he didn't move a single step from where he was. If he had moved from his place, ran in different directions, and tried to catch different angles, he could have easily hit me with his first 4 arrows. I felt a cold sweat on my neck once more. The boy suddenly became a giant in my eyes. Something inside me told me to stop playing and seriously fight this boy. Yes, I think this much warm-up is enough. I got up and started walking slowly toward him. When I was about 15 steps away, I stopped and said, "I think this much distance is more than enough." The boy smiled a bit, then respectfully saluted me by bowing his head with every exchange. I liked this boy more the first time I belittled him. He acted condescendingly, but this time, because I respected him, he started to respect me too. This boy is just the kind of guy I like. He treats you the same way you treat him. I responded to his salute by bringing my weapon-holding hand over my heart, and this time, as soon as the signal was given, I started running toward him with all my speed. He shot a few arrows at my feet. I avoided his arrows by jumping to the side, and he started running towards the woods. It looked like the damned brat was faster than me, and I couldn't keep up with him. He jumped on top of a tree and started climbing like a squirrel. All the snow on the trees began to shake and fall. Everywhere was white with snow, and I lost sight of him. This made me so angry. Until this moment, it was such a fun fight, and I had so much fun. Now that he has run away, were I mistaken about the boy? "Come out, boy, why are you hiding in the trees like a squirrel? Come down right now and fight like a man." I was circling around the tree, looking at the top branches of it. At this moment, I saw a silhouette out of the corner of my eye, and when I lifted my shield as a reflex, an arrow hit the shield. Before I could understand what was happening, something slipped under my shield, put an arrow on my throat, and said, "I wasn't on that tree." How? I could only say that, and I saw him climb that tree. Chapter 76. Chief Wool was following right behind me, but since he wasn't as fast as me, he would never be able to close the distance, but that didn't mean he couldn't pin me. Our battlefield wasn't an endless plain. I couldn't keep running and shooting, so I had to take him by surprise, and something occurred to me at that moment. I shot a few arrows at his feet and quickly started to run toward the trees. As soon as I got to the bottom of the tree, using Primiferous, primal savagery, I created claws and quickly climbed this tree. By the time the Wool approached under the tree, I was already lost in the branches and falling snow. The moment had come to take advantage of this turmoil to use one of the boosts. Bonding with Sith had provided. My bond with Sith gave me night vision as well as subtly and flexible movement. We can call this second buff feline grace. Thanks to it, I could jump up or down from higher points and reach the ground without getting hurt or making any sound basically. Gave me the ability to act like a shadow cat while everyone's eyes were on the top of the tree. I was already lurking behind the trees and flanking Chief Wool. It is unlikely that experienced warriors like Chief Wool will be taken by surprise by flanking. They almost have eyes in the back of their head as they are used to using their peripheral vision, so I used arrows to force him to pull his shield up while I was getting close and slipped past under his shield and put an arrow at his throat in a surprised position. All he could say was, "How?" So I explained to him how I did it. He started laughing uncontrollably. "Rahaha, rahaha. Good, good. I thought I was fighting without underestimating you anymore, but I still underestimated you. I, Hugo Wool, recognize you as someone who could hunt Arthur Dane with a bow. How are you, a 10-name-day-old boy? Come, come. Let's see if you are this good with a sword too." He threw me a wooden sword, and I could see his eyes, they were burning with fighting spirit. "Chief Wool, I'm sorry, but I'm not stupid enough to fight you in a melee, at least for now. Suppose I was 14 name-day old, then I would fight you." "Ha ha ha. You arrogant brat, for now, you say okay then, that is a promise. We are going to have a melee when you are 14 name-day old, and brat, you can drop calling me Chief Wool, and I allow you to call me Big Bucket. You are worthy enough for that." He said that while rubbing his big gut later that day. I learned he broke a few knights and nobles' faces when they called him Big Bucket without his permission. "Brat, you have provided us with good entertainment in these difficult and dark days. Thanks to you, we were distracted for a few hours." When we returned to the Great Hall, I learned that last summer's harvest was lean, so they didn't have enough stock to make it through the winter, and on top of that, fever had struck the settlement. People were dying from this common cold because they were malnutritioned and weak. They were waiting for grain help from the Starks. While I was on top of my bed, I was wondering if there was a way for me to help this person if I had enough herbs for all those sick. I could have cured them, but it is impossible to get any herbs in these winter years. That night I decided it was time for the world to start learning about a druid's existence, and this was going to be an excellent excuse to use my ritual magic, but I couldn't let them know it was me, and I had to create a persona. The following day I bid my farewells and left the mountain clans. After ensuring no people were around, I started collecting grass, bushes, and tree pieces from the environment. First, I used Coursambi, oak's healed, to leave no visible spots on my hands and upper body, and then manipulated all kinds of plant parts using Formohba, mold plants, and created a druid costume. Lastly, I made an old man mask from plants. My upper body was covered with leaves and bark. On my waist was a belt of plants moss arranged in the form of hair, and beard covered my old man mask. And on top of everything was a small crown of antlers made of twigs. The only inconvenience is I had to cast Coursambi, oak's healed, every 2 hours, or it would be dispelled for a few days. I kept making and breaking the costume until I mastered how to make it really fast. There was one more problem left, the height of the persona. I was still a child. I was a big child but not big enough right now. I'm 150 centimeters, 49 feet, and would need at least 20 centimeters more for that. I created platform boots made out of wood and plants. It was a bit hard to move, but this costume was not for sword fighting. Because of the boots, walking was a bit hard, so I created a staff and shaped its head like spiraling horns. Walking with the staff was much better. When I reached the clan Wool again, the guards were more aggressive because of what they saw. You don't see a walking tree every day. "Stranger, stop, don't come any closer. Who are you?" "I'm the voice of the old gods. I came here in their name to help the good people of clan Wool. You can call me the priest of the old gods." Druid Emrys. Chapter 77. A/N, I have created an AXA chapter for the pictures. Druid Emrys. All of the guards were looking at each other with questioning looks. "Did you ever hear of a priest of old gods? What is a druid?" One of the oldest guards turned to them and said. "All of you shut up. And you, crazy old man, we don't have the time or energy to entertain you, so just get out of here before I make you." Good believers, you don't need to be hostile, but I understand no one had ever heard of a priest of old gods, and if someone else told me to, I wouldn't believe it too. Let me prove it to you. Fire your arrows and try to strike me down, and I assure you that no arrow you shoot will hit me. I'm not going to shoot a crazy old man, just go away. It looks like I need to be more theatrical and grandiose. My child, old gods gave me a mission, and I have to get in, heal the sick and then provide all the help I can. Now open your eyes and look at the miracle bestowed to me by the old gods. I approached the mountain slope that stretched into the sky like an endless fortress wall. To the left of the road there were some trees. At the point where that steep slope started I stood in front of the trees and slowly raised both hands, then used Promohba, locate plants. Oh, great old gods of nature! Please bestow your powers on me again, your unworthy servant couldn't convince these good people. Please show your might and enlighten those minds. The trees were around 4 meters high and slowly started to bend and twist. The 4 trees began to twist and merge with each other. It was almost like someone knitting using trees. Each tree and its branches passed under and over each other like a woolen thread and began to form an alcove of about 3 to 4 meters. All of the guards were gaping, some dropped their weapons and started praying fervently, and the others started getting nervous. I finished my acting and slowly sat inside the alcove and said, "I will wait for your chief here, whenever he wants, he can come and have a talk with me." I could hear the tumult and bustle of voices coming from behind the stockades. 5 or 10 minutes later, the wooden gate opened, and the wool appeared in front of there with about 20 soldiers, and they were all armed from head to toe. Clan Wool. Standing before you is not an enemy but a friend. I don't know you, and while I don't even know if you're human or not, I can't decide yet if you're friend or foe. While nodding, I said, "Fair enough. If I hadn't stood at this gate a few hours ago and seen that there was no such construct here before, I wouldn't have believed any of what I was told, but for the sake of argument, let's admit that everything you say is true. Why are you here? As you can see, old gods have given me some miraculous powers, and with these powers comes the responsibility to help the good people of the north." "What kind of help?" "Apart from the control of plants, the old gods also gave me limited healing power, and from what I hear, a lot of Clan Wool got the fever." "Who did you hear from?" "I heard it from the gods when I was dreaming. Now Chief Wool, will you let me do something about this sickness?" After a few back and forth, I finally convinced them that I wasn't an enemy or a mummer. Big Bucket wasn't as buckthead as I thought. He even told me in advance that they would not give anything in return for my help and that I should not expect anything from them. After accepting all that, at last, I was in the settlement. They brought me to a wooden one-story building where the patients were. For the first time, I would practice ritual magic and see its results, so I can say that I am excited. Unlike typical magic, ritual magic consists of a mixture of my mana, as well as the mana in the atmosphere and the mana of other substances and entities used in the ritual. The sacrifice is usually an animal for Druid rituals, and there are candles, runes, and drawings, but it was possible to combine ritual magic with sacrificial magic. Sacrificial magic had to have a balance. Just as everything in nature has a balance. If you start sacrificing innocence for the sake of magic, it wouldn't be Druidic or Order magic anymore, and it would be dark magic, which has more price than the sacrifice offered. If you kill an innocent for the magic, the caster would be staining their soul, and with time the soul of the caster would turn black. With that, dark magic would turn the caster into something else. Of course, you can sacrifice humans for Druidic magic too, but it has strict rules. For example, you can never offer the soul of the sacrifice, which is a no-no, and the offering needs to be a sinner in the face of nature. There is only one crime, taking an innocent life. If a sinner's life is sacrificed in a Druidic ritual, the sinner's body and remaining lifespan are used for energy. The soul goes freely where it should go, but in blood and dark magic, the primary offering is the soul itself. They do not differentiate between an innocent and a sinner. We could think of the soul as a nuclear power plant. If used for a spell, it will make it 10 or 100 times more potent. I need to cast a ritual spell to get them to beat this disease. I need a sheep for this. Don't worry, if you want the money for the sheep, I will give it to you. There were about 145 patients, and this ritual could be performed on 50 people at most, which means I had to spend 3 days here. It's not possible for me to do the ritual inside. As far as I've learned, not all patients are here. I'll prepare in an open area outside and let you know when I'm ready. Many still looked at me with suspicion, but I ignored them and got to work. Should I scare them a little? I started casting Percy's fire spell, but this one was different. Rather than a ball of fire, I was spewing fire from my hands. It had little power and only a 2-meter range, but it was enough to melt the snow. I could hear screams of fear and panic coming from behind me, but some of the people were praying while kneeling on the ground. After melting the snow on the ground, I drew a 3-meter wide circle on the ground using my staff and started to draw the necessary runes around this circle. The runes basically said, "Cure minor disease and keep death away." The reason I was able to decipher the death rune in the wall was because of this ritual. It had the exact words in it. Chapter 78. A/N, I have created an auxiliary chapter for the Pix. I inscribed the runes onto the ground, and the last thing I had to do was the hardest part. I needed a solid rock pillar of at least 2 meters, and I had to spend a bit more mana to get it since I could control the rocks with the Formotigan, Mold Earth, spell. I knelt in front of the point where I wanted the column and put both my hands on the ground. I closed my eyes and focused all my attention on the magic. On top of that, I could feel the earth and rocks below the ground, as if I was floating under the ground. I could dive to about 10 meters, 11 yards, because this area was mountainous, and the ground was full of rocks, but each one was massive. I touched these rocks with magic and slowly began to shape a small piece of it into the shape I wanted. This process took longer than shaping the soil took when the pillar took the shape I wanted. I slowly started pulling it toward the surface. Seeing that the pillar was starting to come out from under the ground, the people began to speak in amazement again, but they were no longer running away and were kneeling and praying next to the others. After the column came to the surface, I had to engrave runes on it, but I didn't have time to use chisels, so I used the Formotigan, Mold Earth, spell and my finger to write the necessary runes on the rock as if writing on the sand. Now everything was ready. All we had to do was place the patients within 20 meters of the circle and activate the ritual by sacrificing the sheep. The patients were gradually moved into the square, and they had to do this several times as there was not enough room for them all at once. Everything was ready, and I stood before the rock pillar holding the sheep. I raised the knife in my hand and spoke in a loud voice. Animus hen vigun, endigan bisa miser manes se fortu wiserlda ahamedi under. Spirits of nature, see these pitiful souls and bless them with your healing powers. Once I finished the incantation, I cut the neck of the sheep, and the gushing blood painted the rock pillar crimson. At that moment, 100 mana gushed out of me and, combined with the atmospheric mana, then with the sheep's blood, rushed to the rock pillar. It was as if nothing had happened for a few seconds, but slowly, within the 20-meter diameter area, vibrant green glows began to emerge from the ground. These radiances floated up into the air as high as 5 meters. Then, they began to fall on the patients like floating snowflakes. When touched by these vibrant green glows, patients were covered with faint green hues in about 10 minutes. Under a shower of vibrant green glows, the patients' labored breathing had begun to return to normal, the coughing sounds had ceased, and their fever had begun to subside. The ritual lasts for 1 hour, or until 50 sick people enter the ritual area. After that, it will lose all of its effects. They did the same thing 3 more times, and the second 50th patient entered the area. Rest of the glow rained on her, then there wasn't any vibrant green glow left. With this, today's ritual was finished. Chief Wool slowly approached me and knelt in front of me. I don't know if you are really a priest of the old gods or not. One thing is true, you've saved 50 of my people from death today, and I'm grateful to you for that. Please stand up, Chief Wool, our work is not done. We still have 100 more sick, but unfortunately, this ritual takes a lot out of me, so I can only do it once a day. On the morrow, we will do a new ritual. Thank you, priest of the old gods. Thank you, Druid Emrys. I raised my hands, signaling the crowd to stop their chants, and said, with the blessing of the old gods, I came to help you, but I am not a god, I cannot save everyone. Even though we have done this ritual, some may still die. Unfortunately, my current rituals are at a beginner level and not strong enough to overcome serious illnesses. But I can't tell them that. I turned to Chief Wool and said, right now, I have to go back to the land and rest, and please don't bother me. We'll be back for the ritual here and going to need another sheep. They all turned to look at the sheep, and there was nothing left of the sheep except their wool. The animal had slowly turned to dust. This is what happens when something is used as an offering. As the sun was setting on top of the northern mountain range, I raised my staff and casted Formotigan, Mold Earth. The ground started to split open, then I got inside it. After getting in, closed the opening. At this moment, all the people around were fervently praying. I had opened small breathing holes and tried to connect with my familiars. All of my familiars were in the forest, and I had made a small cave for them and put Poe in charge. Poe, is everything okay? Yes, Daddy, other than Erebus, everyone listens to me. Even little Sith and Laika are more obedient than Erebus. At that moment, Erebus gets into the conversation. I'm bored, I just got out for a bit. Erebus, you have to listen to Poe for 3 days. After that, I will be back, and we will go all around the north. After talking with them, I got into the training space and slept. POV the WULL. Today was a day full of miracles, and I didn't know what to do for the first time in my life. By the end of the day, I found myself kneeling before Druid Emrys. I still don't know if the old gods sent him or if he has another agenda. One thing is for sure, he has power beyond my understanding. Some of the treated patients got up within 3 to 4 hours. And almost all of their fevers went down. Even the end of the day was a different shock. Druid Emrys split the ground in half and burrowed into the ground. The man goes underground to rest and claims he is still human. Whatever his plan is, it's true that he's helping us on behalf of the old gods, and he's a very powerful being. It would be better to enlist his help than to be hostile to him. Chapter 79. POV the Wool. The following day, I was sitting next to the place where the Druid entered underground and waited for a few minutes. Then the soil was split with small tremors. The Druid climbed to the surface and closed the earth back like yesterday. We did the same ritual without any difference. For 3 days, I watched the Druid like a hawk and chased after him wherever he had gone inside the settlement, but I didn't see him doing anything unbecoming of a man. All he did was help as he promised, and he managed to save almost all of the sick. Of course, as he said, he couldn't save all. The people with weak bodies couldn't beat the fever and died, but the number was considerably lower than we were expecting. Only 13 people died, and it was nothing but a miracle. Usually, when the fever strikes in winter, we lose around 100 to 150 life a year because it will jump from one person to another. I might believe if he said he was one of the old gods, and I don't think he is a human because of his wooden mask. We don't know what he looks like, but just yesterday, a few of the people wanted to thank him and throw themselves at his feet, but as he collapsed on the ground, they accidentally pulled his robe made of moss, grass, and ivy and revealed his chest and arms. We saw not human skin but tree bark, which moved every time he breathed. When I saw his hands, I thought he was wearing a well-made glove encased with bark, but not anymore because I never saw bark move like skin. It was unnerving but not shocking when you thought about all the things he could do. Chief Wool, my job here is done, and I'm needed elsewhere today. I will be leaving, but I want one thing from you. It's not compulsory, it's a request. I would be glad if you could fulfill it. If he asked for all our money, I would give it. All I want from you is to spread the news everywhere, but when you do it, say that a real Druid never demands a fee and does not accept any form of donation from the people he has helped. After a while, my existence will spread, and over time the mummer and the charlatans will try to imitate me to con good people. To prevent that, you must spread the news about how I do things. Yes, of course, we can do that. I will send riders to every close village, and they will talk about you to anyone that listens. But my joy suddenly escaped. Many people we believed to die were not dead, which meant many mouths to feed, and we didn't have enough grain for all of them. POVMC. Chief Wool, what happened? Suddenly you become dispirited and fall into thoughts. The Wool sighed heavily and said, the people we thought would die didn't die, which meant there was more mouth to feed than we thought. Of course, I knew they had these problems, but first, I would go to another mountain clan, and then I was going to return here saying I got a new vision from the old gods, so the severity of the situation hit them. But it looks like I don't have to. The ritual I need to do for the plant growth won't do any good to them if done with a sheep offering because it will lower the growth time of plants to half, and it won't do any good this winter. But if we do the ritual with a human offering, the plants will grow in less than a day. Actually, I can bring a solution to your problem, but this solution would have a price that is not low. I'm not talking about money. What is it then? We need to offer a murderer of innocence rather than a sheep. His stance and attitude seemed to be very uncomfortable, and he didn't know what to say. You mean? Yes, human offering. We need to offer someone who had killed an innocent person. We sat for a few hours, and I explained what we needed to do and what kind of person we needed. I told him he needed someone with a darkened soul if he wanted to do this. If they didn't have someone like that, we didn't have to think about it because I don't carry killers in my pocket. There are 3 people who cannot execute because of the start of the outbreak and waiting for execution, but I have no idea what kind of souls these men have. We got up and came to where they held the men, and I touched them one by one and checked whether their souls were stained. The presence of stains on the soul meant that they had knowingly and willingly killed an innocent person, and if it was wholly darkened, it either meant he killed many innocents or had no remorse. People didn't have a chance to deceive their own souls. One may convince himself that he didn't do anything terrible, but he can't do it to his soul. The soul of only one of the 3 was stained. The man was still trying to deceive himself, saying that he did nothing to deserve death. He had killed a whore, and talking like that was normal. The other 2 were killers, too, but their crimes were different. One of them killed someone in a tavern fight, and the killing was done unknowingly. The last one killed a man because of R.A.E, so he didn't kill an innocent. The reason I can offer someone's life as an offering is that when you kill an innocent, you are waiving your right to your own life. When he learned that, the Wool contemplated for a few more hours, and he agreed to do the ritual. The next morning everything was ready, and we were at the valley below the settlement. I had erected a stone pillar and engraved it with the runes, grow the plants, provide a boon, and the people had spread grain seeds on top of the snow-covered fields. I started chanting the incantation Vigasan Muna, Don Olval de Mirai Hen Aha in Phi Fortu Y, Se Par Olval de Ia with Macron Sz Cirrus, Mother Nature bestow us with some of your endless blessings, and provide us with a good harvest. As soon as I finished chanting, I cut the man's throat, and 150 mana flowed out of me like water, then combined with atmospheric mana and the man's blood, painted the stone pillar crimson. From the stone pillar, green energy waves began to spread to an area of 2 kilometers, 30 to 40 centimeters of snow on the ground began to melt, and the earth started to thaw. After the soil was thawed and softened, the seeds slowly entered under the ground. then starting from the stone pillar. The color of the earth turned dark green. The man's body first turned into a mummy, and that mummy-like body turned into dust, then flew with the wind. In about 10 hours, the field of 2 kilometers was filled up to the brim with golden ears of wheat. Chapter 80. POV the WULL. I have never seen such big ears of wheat in my life. If we ration it, it will be enough for a year, and by this time, Lord Stark will be able to send us aid. Thank you, Lord Emrys. Thanks to you, my people will not die from hunger this year. No need to thank me, everything is old God's will, and don't call me Lord, you can call me Druid Emrys or just Emrys. Now everything is done and done, the time has come to say my goodbye to Clan Wool. Druid Emrys, please don't leave so soon, let us thank you properly. If you fulfill the request I have asked of you, you will be thanking me for the most. We started walking slowly out of the settlement. Druid Emrys, may I ask a question if I don't offend you? You can ask, I don't get offended easily. In the stories we've heard since childhood, human sacrifice is always seen as blood magic, and we've been taught that it's a bad form of magic. I had to make a tough decision to keep my people afloat, and I would have made the same decision again, but I'd like to know if possible what did we do? I'd be on a stool by the side of the road and gestured for him to sit on it. We can divide magic into 2 main topics, order and dark magic. Yes, blood magic is usually black magic, but it can also be order magic, but it is not suitable for order. For example, by offering a Leviathan, you can kill 10 people but can't even heal one person's mortal wounds, which is why it is unsuitable for order magic. Blood magic can be used either by offering only life or offering soul, but its strength varies a lot. Dark magic only works with the soul. You can offer even a baby for blood magic, but for druidic magic, if you try to do something like this, at best, you'll die because it backfires, or at worst, you'll be crippled from the neck down for the rest of your life. Hearing this, the Wool's eyes widened. Killing an innocent person knowingly and willingly is an unforgivable crime. When someone does that in the eyes of nature, that person has waived his right to live, so we recycle that life energy for the spell. As I explained to you before, now it is up to you if you are going to believe me, or you could claim I'm an evil sorcerer. POV MC. After leaving Clan Wool, I also toured the other 5 mountain clans. Like here, every clan struggled with a cold, and I also helped them. However, one clan suffered from food shortages because they had a dreadful summer, and I had to perform a fertility ritual there too. This journey took about 4 months, and we entered a new year. I was now 11 years old, and it was the 285th year of Aegon's conquest. After visiting the mountain clans, I decided to head east toward Last Hearth instead of going south to Deepwood Moat. Accompanied by the icy winter winds, I decided to stay overnight in a town near Last Hearth. My ass hadn't seen a bed for a month, and after I arranged a place for my kids, I returned to the town. I had bonded with Lyca too. Bonding with Lyca had given me a super olfactory ability, 1 point of speed, and 15 mana. Now I had 6 speed. Bond with Barris had given me a better sense of smell, but nothing like this. If before I was only able to smell something in tens of meters, now I am able to smell things for hundreds of meters. Lyca and Sith had grown into juvenile beasts and started to talk, but were still talking in broken sentences. When I entered the small town inn, there were about 20 people inside. It was almost full to the brim. I approached the innkeeper and said, "Things seem to be going well." While cleaning his mugs, looked at me out of the corner of his eye and said, "I can't complain, but boy, I have never seen you in this town. Why are you alone?" I threw some coppers on top of the bar and said, "Why, are you the mayor of the town? None of your business. Do you have a room? 10 more copper for being a little asshole. That is a robbery. Then go sleep in the stable." I threw 10 more coppers and said, "Then you have to give me food too." He returned to the kitchen a few minutes later, holding a bowl of stew and half a loaf of bread. While eating this meal, the bard on the stage was singing about a green-handed warrior who sacrificed the wicked man, brought abundance, and put an end to diseases. The people around me were also talking about this druid, or what they called Emrys Greenhand. Some believed, and some did not. Just then, a man burst into the room excitedly and spoke loudly. "Druid Emrys is here." I sprayed the water I was drinking at that moment. How the hell did he know? He is right outside at the town square. I knew it was going to happen. We humans have always been opportunistic dogs. I knew there was going to be some mummer impersonating me, but this was an excellent opportunity, and now we will see if the admonitions I give in every place I help will work. When I left the inn and went to the town square, I saw a man with brushwood and moss in his robe and a deer skull on his head. On his face was a very badly sculptured old man mask. "Salutations to you fine folks of this town. I, Emrys Greenhand, come to you in your time of need to help you break away from this wretched disease's hands. Like any other con, he was talking in riddles and circles to confuse them, and someone from the town square volunteered for this healing season after some mumbo-jumbo and throwing some things into the fire. He started and shocked people. The volunteer had miraculously healed, but this wasn't the end but the real beginning. The volunteer said, "Great Druid! Whatever I do for your help will not be enough, but please accept this humble reward." At first, he pushed away the money a few times as if he refused it, and finally accepted. I waited for a while, waiting for someone from the crowd to say that he had received the money. He couldn't be real. I couldn't stand it, and I shouted, "The Druid I've heard never accepts a reward, not even a bowl of meal, and I've heard that if someone accepts a reward, he is definitely fake. You are absolutely fake." Chapter 81. 285 AC. The Druid I've heard never accepts a reward, not even a bowl of meal, and I've heard that if someone accepts a reward, he is definitely fake. You are absolutely fake. The second I finished my words, there was a thick silence, a silence so thick you could cut it. Then all hell got loose. The volunteer started to shout at me. "How dare you? How can you find my life so insignificant? What if I show my gratitude to the person who saved me from this pain? What is it to you? Disrespectful little brat." I just turned around and left. I don't care if they are so stupid that they can't even follow simple instructions. The Druid does not take anything. While walking around the square the next day, I learned half of the village had been defrauded idiots. When the con man said that if they took the Druid's amulets even though they were not sick, their lifespan would increase, they gave a world of money for a pouch full of grass. When I left, I went to Last Hearth and spent a few days there. My interaction with Great Jan Umber was almost the same as with Big Bucket. He also wanted to test me, wondering why Lord Stark cared so much about me. Different from the Big Bucket, Great Jan, like Roderick, thinks archery was the work of common soldiers. In his words, real men kill their enemies face to face. We fought for a bit, but it wasn't much of a fight. The fucking giant man handled me. I thought Big B was strong, but Great Jan was stronger. He had 125 STR and 8 SPD. I was only slightly faster than him, so I could barely skirmish with him for 10 minutes. But I couldn't even make an attack for 10 minutes, all I could do was dodge his attacks. It's a bit bizarre. But Great Jan liked it. I didn't need to do anything as Emrys in Last Hearth, so I wanted to go to Skagos after a few days of rest, but I couldn't find a sailor crazy enough to try to get there in this winter time. Then I stopped by a carhold first and went south towards Dreadfort. In addition to touring the north as Druid Emrys, I was saving people from bandits as Squire Aylmer. Bandits, who were hungry as the brutal winter months progressed, were plundered and devastated the poor small folk. As Druid Emrys, I healed the sick, and as Aylmer, I rescued them from bandits. As the months passed, Druid Emrys and young Squire Aylmer's names started to echo almost everywhere in the north. Of course, with it came the scammers and mummers. I stopped in a town 2 days from the Dread Fort, and the fever ravaged the town. Close to 400 people were sick, and the entrance to the town was closed off by Bolton soldiers, so I changed to my Druid persona and came back to the town. When I came close, the soldiers stopped me. "Halt! You can't go past this point." They positioned themselves between me and the town. One of the soldiers came close to him and said, "Sir, it is him, the Druid. The Green Hand." The soldiers retreated a little timidly, but their leader gave me a smirking smile. Then he said, "Don't be cravens. Do you really think he has magical abilities? This is nothing but a mummer's work to cheat small folk of some coins. I have heard from my friends up north there are many who got cheated out of their earnings. Good soldiers of House Bolton, I do not have any qualms with you. All I want is to help people, and if you are not going to help them, I have to." "Fuck off, you crazy old man. Are you unable to hear what I'm saying? Let me spell it out for you. You cannot pass. I'm going into that town either way. If you stand in my way, I have to go through you." Lord Bolton might have abandoned those people to their demise, but old gods did not. The soldiers slowly began to surround me, and their leader said, "Did you just insult Lord Bolton? Seize him." About 10 soldiers surrounded me and pointed their spears toward me. Just then, I used Tegan Impule, Earth Shock, and concussive power was released around me. Every soldier around 5 meters from me got knocked back for at least 4 meters. All of them got knocked out, and their leader was petrified by fear and bewilderment. "I forgive your mistake, as you are just soldiers trying to do your job, and I will not take your life, but if you stand in the way of the old gods once again, as the old gods are my witness, I will take your lives." I passed the leader, who was shaking on the ground, and started to move toward the town, and just at that moment, the soldiers began to come to their senses so that they wouldn't think of attacking again. I stuck my staff in the snow and started shooting fire from my hands. The range of the fire was only 2 meters, but it was enough to scare them all away. I decided to call this Burning Hand, as I decided to name it. An incantation for this spell appeared in my mind. Percy Sondos, Burning Hand, so, I can learn new spells this way too if I use the incantation, its range and power will be better, it lasts for a second and becomes a level 2 spell. The town wasn't big, there was only one main road and several alleys. I think around 2,000 people live here. After entering the town, I had to prove I was the real Druid. Emery's people began to grovel at my feet and beg for help as I heard, there were around 400 sick people. After half an hour, I was ready for the ritual. I did the ritual for the next 6 days and cured 300 of them, but 27 people still died. I was preparing to start the ritual on the 7th day, but around 100 soldiers marched into the town. There were about 30 horse riders, the rest was infantry. One with the full plate armor came forward and said, "The criminal, who calls himself Druid Emrys, is summoned before Lord Bolton for questioning. Step forward and follow us." The people formed a cordon between the soldiers and me to protect me. But I signaled them to let the soldiers pass. I came out of the people and stood before the knight and said, "I know no law other than the law of old gods, and in front of their law, I did not commit any crime, so, I have no reason to be questioned. If your lord wants to talk to me, he can come and see me. 6 days ago, Dreadfort POV Lord Bolton. I have no idea if this druid is real or not, but there are too many accounts for it to be fake, so, I have to be cautious. Even if he is real, I can't look weak. Sir Barak Cray, take 100 men with you and escort this druid to me. POV Sir Barak Cray. We were on the road for 3 days and almost there. Sir, do you think this druid is real? Of course not, you never traveled, so you wouldn't know, but there are a lot of mummers in this world, some of them can even breathe fire. I reckon he is a clown trying to make some coin while frightening some gullible soldiers and small folk. POV MC. The knight rode forward a little further and began to shout. So. It doesn't come to give a little bit of leeway to the small folk, they immediately start to think there's something. Listen to me, you crazy commoner, Lord Bolton asked for you, so you will come with me willingly or in chains. It is your decision. I turned towards the townspeople and said. Today, Lord Bolton stood in the way of the old gods and me, preventing us from bringing healing to you. From this day forward, anyone in this town that the fever takes dies because of Lord Bolton. I turned into a dog in front of a few hundred people, ran, and disappeared into the crowd. I had already left town through the alleys before the soldiers had passed through the crowd with their horses. 3 days later, Dreadfort POV Lord Bolton. I was fuming with anger, and I was surrounded by idiots in anger. I threw my mug at Sir Cray. Did I ask you to escort him, or did I ask you to arrest him? HAAA. As if it wasn't enough that the druid was real, this idiot pissed him off too, and before the druid disappeared, he made every true believer of old gods antagonistic against me. Sir Cray, did I ever show you my inheritance before? I think you will enjoy it immensely when you see it. Sir Cray, let's go to the dungeons, we have a long discussion to have. Chapter 82. After my unfortunate incident with the Bolton soldiers, I went to Hornwood and stopped to train with the familiars in the training space, where I took a break. Now Poe, Erebus, Barris and I were fighting dummy with no restraint, and occasionally when we swallowed more than we could chew, we were dying. Barris' cowardice disappeared when he became an adult dog, and his personality became more protective and possessive. As time passed, all my familiars were getting stronger than normal animals. Barris could hardly bend steel at this time, but he could bend armor made of plain iron with his teeth. Poe, on the other hand, started to get much better at using the air element. Now, she could cast the dive bombing spell within about 6 meters of height and learned a new spell. She was able to cast the Eludogelmio, warding wind, spell on herself. Erebus, like Barris, was getting physically strong. His talons and beak were so sharp they could bend and scratch iron armor. And he kept getting bigger. He was now 16 meters, 52 feet, from head to talons, and Barris was 11 meters from head to paw. Imu didn't get bigger than 1 meter, but he manifested his magical ability. He could use earth elements, poison, spit, and spray. He wasn't able to use any earth element attack spells, but he could dive into rocks or soil like it was water. As for his poison, he could send a concentrated poison for 6 meters or spray it in a 2-meter cone. The Sith and Laika are about 60 centimeters tall and love to fight as they are already wild animals, but I only have them fight with defensive dummies. While we were continuing our training in training space, we heard from Poe and Erebus murders and learned that people were fighting about 2 kilometers away. We left the training space immediately, and I used Promodynes, locate animals. About 80 people were fighting since I was able to connect to the dominated ravens at this distance. I looked at what was happening and saw that a caravan on the main road had been attacked. Since I thought it was an excellent opportunity to increase Squire Aylmer's reputation, I used all the buffs and started running in that direction. When I arrived at the scene, I understood what was going on. 53 of the 80 people were civilians, and the number of bandits was 27. It was total pandemonium. There wasn't even one real warrior among the civilians. They all tried to defend themselves with farm implements and sticks, and many died. Without wasting time, I started shooting arrows for those with the highest stats among the bandits. I had killed 10 of them before the bandits realized what had happened, and out of the approximately 40 remaining villagers, only 10 were able to fight. The other 30 were children, the elderly, or men and women who were too scared to fight. 2 of the fighting villagers, in particular, caught my attention. A man 18 meters tall was swinging a massive wooden club in his hand like a stick. The man had 85 STR, the other was a 12-14-year-old boy, and he was moving fluidly around everyone like oil and stabbing everything that came close with the dagger in his hand. What caught my attention in this kid was how fast he was. He has 89 SPD. The fastest bandit had 74 SPD, so they couldn't catch him, but it was clear that the boy didn't know how to fight or use the dagger. 10 of the remaining 17 bandits had begun to surround them, and the other 10 were coming towards me. I couldn't destroy them with spells as I did in bandits' hideouts because there were many people around, so I could only use spells undetectable in this crowd. I was also throwing knives as I approached bandits. Of the 5 knives I threw, 3 of them stabbed the bandits at deadly points, and the other 2 caused minor cuts, but seeing 3 more of their friends die added to their hesitation. So I immediately took advantage of the gap and attacked the farthest bandit. He was able to parry my first move, but my following move caught him by surprise. I was able to make a deep cut in the inside of his calf. Meanwhile, while the other 7 were trying to surround me, I made a small hole in the ground using Formotigan, mold earth, and the bandit at the front tripped and fell. The other 3 bandits following him tripped over him and fell. This way, I disabled 4 of the remaining 6 bandits. For a while I cast the Letagon snare on the bandit, who fell on top of the other 2 when they fell, causing it to freeze for a few seconds. Meanwhile, I did a quick work out of the 2 standing bandits. Of the 4 bandits that had fallen to the ground, only 1 was able to get up, and others were still trying to shake off their paralyzed friends. I threw another knife at one of those struggling on the ground and hit him in the back. Seeing this, the other bandit attacked me, but thanks to my buffs, I had 8 STR and 9 SPD, so none of the bandits could stand in front of me. It took me a few minutes to kill the remaining bandits. The bandits fighting the villagers saw this and began to flee. Of the 10 villagers who fought, only 4 remained. Kids, kill the fleeing bandits when they're out of sight. My familiars all happily agreed in unison. Each and every one of them was turning into a battle junkie. Chapter 83. I could hear whispers from behind. He is still a child. How did he kill all those bandits? When I approached the villagers, one of them stepped forward and said, "We thank you, sir, for saving us. We owe our life to you. I'm not a sir yet, and you can call me Ermer." "You mean Ermer Drazel? It is an honor to meet you. We heard your accomplishments. Am I that famous?" "Yes, we could say your name started to strike fear in the hearts of bandits." I chuckled for a second. "You don't need to exaggerate, and I didn't help you people to be praised. I helped because it is the right thing to do." He bowed a bit and said, "My lord, you are wise beyond your years." "Don't call me lord, I'm not a noble. Why are you guys here at this time of the year, and you don't even have any escort? You are asking to be robbed." Their faces fell in an instant, a gloomy and sad air filled all around. "The red fever has destroyed our village, and this is all that's left of 300 people. If we didn't abandon the village, we would have died too. That is why we don't have any escorts. All we are trying to do is get to the closest town." "I will escort you to the closest town then." We decided to bury the dead, and while carrying the dead one with the massive wooden club, stumbled and fell to the ground swinging a log. That big must have exhausted him. I tried to lift him by holding his arm, and the young man with the dagger held his other arm. "Mister, are you okay? I guess that log tired you out a lot." When I said that, the young man laughed so hard he fell to the ground. The big guy turned to me, and his face was sour. "Mister? Why are you calling me a mister? I'm only 13 name day old." I was so surprised by what he said that I couldn't hold my mouth. "Like hell you are, you have a beard." He got flustered and, while rubbing his face, said, "It is not a beard, it is only a stubble, and if you don't believe me ask him, he is my twin brother." I turned and looked at the young man's face. Yes, they had the same dark auburn hair and features and looked alike, but they looked more like an uncle and nephew rather than brothers. Then the boy said, "Uncle, why are you doing this? Don't mess with Squire Ermer." The big guy turned pure red from anger and said, "Keegan, if you call me uncle again, I will break your face." I'm sorry, yes, he is my twin. He just devoured everything our mother ate when she was carrying us and didn't leave me anything, that is why he looks like that." "Yep, they are brothers, alright with this body, he is 13, that is hard to believe. I'm huge for my age too, but I'm this big because of magic, and those two are freaks of genetics, one is swift, and the other is a Hulk. Can you get up? Yes, I'm just too hungry, we didn't eat anything since yesterday. Daddy, we are done here. Are you all okay? Yes. Then tell your murders to find me some big games. After burying the dead, everyone rested, and Poe contacted me about a few deers I took off with a few guys to hunt and bring back something to eat. When I looked at all of their faces carefully, I could see they were gaunt. After we ate what we had hunted, we set off again. We were now on the main road between White Harbor and Barrowton and had not yet reached its intersection with King's Road. We were moving really slowly because most of them had to walk because we didn't have enough carts. Meanwhile, I got along with the twins and learned that they were now orphans and unsure of what to do in the future. Over a few breaks, they asked me to teach them something, and I could see that they had talent. No, 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 Harlock. Stop attacking with all your might, like an ox. Because you always attack with all your might, you spin like a top when you miss. I held the stick in my hand to Harlock's throat, who fell to the ground and said, "You are dead again. You have to learn to control yourself, and you can't go crazy like mad cows." After almost a week of travel, we reached Barrowton. "Sir Aylmer, we owe everything to you, if not for you, we would." He died. All of them started to bow and thank me. "I told you I'm not a knight yet. Sir, we don't care about us, you are our savior. I hope all of you will have a better life here." I turned to the twins. "As for you two, what are you planning to do?" "We don't know, and we aren't really good farmers. I think we will try our luck in something else." "Then I have a suggestion for you two. How about becoming soldiers and working for me?" Both of their eyes lit up, and they said excitedly, "Can we?" "Yes, you can. You have the talent for it," they said without hesitation. "Okay, then we're coming with you." I laughed and said, "You're not well enough to travel with me right now, to be honest. You'll be a hindrance to me. I want you to go to Winterfell and wait for me there in a year. I'll be back." If they come with me, I have to show them my real face, and I don't have that much confidence in them yet. First thing in the morning, I made arrangements for them to go with a large convoy of merchants to Winterfell. I showed the convoy leader Lord Stark's pass and underlined the importance of their safe arrival at Winterfell. Chapter 84. You will go as far as Winterfell with this convoy, and when you get there, give this letter to Sir Roderick Castle. He will arrange a seat for you in the military barracks, but do not swear allegiance to the Starks. You are going to be my men." Keegan asked in confusion. "Aren't you working for Starks too?" "Not exactly. In time, I will be leaving Winterfell. I will not stay as a knight, and I will become a noble. Of course, it is up to you to decide who you are going to serve." "We want to serve you." "Right. Okay then, when Sir Roderick sees your talent, he is going to try and steal you, but I explained in my letter you guys are my men." After sending the twins on their way, I left the Barrowton. It has been 3 months since I left Barrowton, and I have been around Torrens Square for a month too. These are really beautiful. In a region where the elements of nature are very intense because there is a big lake, there is not only a nature element but also a water element in abundance. I learned 2 new spells thanks to the elements in this area. Rinvedar, Walk on Water, as the name states, allows the caster to walk on water for half an hour. It costs 15 mana and has a 1-hour cooldown. Because it is strenuous to cast it for now, I'm not able to cast it on someone else, but in the future, I might be able to. The other spell is called Melada Tegan, Meld with Earth. With this spell, as Imu does, I can dive into the soil, but I can't dive into the rocks, and I can only dive 1 meter deep because I can't breathe underground. I can only move inside the earth as long as I can hold my breath. And my movement speed is halved when I'm underground. This will be so good for ambushes and retreating. It would have been so much cooler if I had this while running away from the Bolton soldiers. If I'm buffed it, I would be moving at 45 speed underground, and it is almost as fast as an average human's running speed. It costs 2 mana every 5 seconds underground. After walking on the Torren Lake for fun and giving some fishermen heart attacks as Druid Emrys, I had come up to the fishing boat and waved at them. Some of them were waving at me with gaping mouths, while others were sending a prayer to the old gods. After here, I decided to first go to the Rills, then cut through the Rills to reach Blazewater Bay. After there, I will go up north to the Stony Shores and, lastly, Deepwood Motte. With it, my northern journey would come to an end. The Rills, as the name suggests, has many streams and brooks but, at the same time, a bit of a mountainous region. There is some farmable land at the southern end of the Rills, but the cold sea breezes affect the yield negatively. I have spent 3 months in this region after healing people as Emrys and destroying some bandit strongholds as Aylmer. I have left the Rills. After passing through the rills, I reached Blazewater Bay. I have been doing the same things for a month, healing and killing. As I made my way down the paths running parallel to Blazewater Bay in the direction of Stony Shore, I noticed that many trees had been cut down on this shoreline. From rills to the Wolf's Wood, this area is famous for durable woods, like pine and ironwood. Most of the trees in this part were cut down. I continued to follow the coastline, and when Poe announced that about 100 people were cutting trees about 3 to 4 kilometers away, I used the familiar sight to see what was happening. People were working like bees and loading the felled trees onto ships on the beach, but the crests on the ship's sails were not familiar at all. Definitely not House Riswell's, because I saw theirs a month ago, and it is a black horse's head, eyes and mane red, on bronze within a black and grailed border, but this crest had a bone hand. White on red. Authenticate sails. Information started to flow into my head. House Drum of Oldwick is a noble house from the Iron Islands Ironborns. What the hell are those sea rats doing here? Are they stealing it, or did the Riswells made a trade agreement with them? I'm 90% sure they are stealing, but it wasn't illegal to trade with Ironborns, it was just frowned upon. At that moment, I decided to use Poe to check the entire coastline all the way to Stony Shore, and after flying about 50 to 60 kilometers, I came back to 100 or 200 men cutting trees all around the coastline. I saw 2 more Ironborn houses, House Blacktide of Blacktide and House Orkwood of Orkmont. Why are they stealing that much wood? What are those wet rats planning? I have broken my connection with Poe and ordered her to return. What should I do? Should I go back to the House Riswell and tell them what was going on? I thought about it a bit, and I shouldn't do that if these assholes are stealing this openly. Either House Riswell betrayed the North or, the more likely possibility, there are traitors among Riswell's retainers. Every basket will have some rotten eggs. When I was in their house, I found Roderick Riswell's loyalty to the Starks a bit lacking, but the poison in his tongue when he was talking about Ironborn was genuine. It is doubtful Roderick Riswell would make deals with Ironborns. What happened here didn't smell good at all. Something was wrong, so I decided to leave my northern trip unfinished and head back to Winterfell. When Poe got back, I decided to come up with a plan. How big can you magnify your current murders, Poe and Erebus? Daddy, I can make it around 60. You. If Poe can do it, I can do it too. After hearing that, Poe said. Can you even count up to 60? Shut up, I can make it as big as yours. Okay. Then I'm going to leave you guys here. Make your murders as big as possible and start patrolling the sea by sending your ravens in a rotation. Create a cordon on the sea. If you see ships coming, message me immediately. All of my land familiars become almost as big as a tiger, so bringing them to towns was a no-no, and their hide had become so thick arrows couldn't penetrate it. Now while we were training in the space, they had become killing machines. Arrows can't harm them as long as they are not hit in the eyes, and most swords can't cut them deep in areas with thick muscles. Because I killed so many bandits, the training space had become as big as 100x100, and there were more than 250 dummies. Lyca and Barris, you should leave and get packs too. When we get to the Wolf's Wood. Barris, you won't be able to find many dogs as strong as we need, so move with Lyca. I turned to Sith. She was lashing her thick, furry tail and waiting for my command. You should come with me. We should try our chance at the northern mountains. I have read there are many shadow cats at the Vale, but it is too far, and there must be some in the north, too. Chapter 85. 286 AC. It had been almost 2 years since I left Winterfell, and not much had changed here. The most significant change had been Sir Roderick's belly. We were on our way to the keep, and I said, "By old gods, you got fat." When I said that, he was a bit taken aback, and then he started laughing while holding his belly. "You cheeky brat, what can I do? My old lady looks after me well, but that long tongue of yours going to cause trouble for you in the future." POV Roderick Castle. It had been 2 years last time I saw him, but we have heard all about him and his exploits from taverns and ravens. He even got a nickname. "It is my honor to be in the presence of Ermurdrazzle, the Bane." I did a fake bow, and he looked flustered and said, "I don't accept that nickname. What the hell is the Bane? It is so embarrassing. I can guess right now Rob and John are going to make fun of me for years to come. We don't choose our nicknames, the people give them." "Who told you to kill that many bandits? If the tales are to be believed, you killed 5,000 bandits. I didn't even kill 300. Ha, this boy is going to kill me. He acts as if hunting 300 bandits in 2 years is perfectly normal. How many knights can say that he alone hunted 300 bandits? Is he really a bane or a blessing? It will come out in time. Have you come across this Druid Emery's character while traveling north?" "Yes, I have. One time it was a sight to behold." "Are you saying he is real?" "As real as it comes, most things you hear are accurate. I don't know about the old god's part, but he has real powers. He turned into a dog and disappeared in front of me. We sent men to the mountain clans because the first words about him originated from there, but they didn't come back yet. I heard something a bit disturbing about that too. What did you hear? He sacrificed a murderer and brought fertility to the land like the Garth Green Hand. We heard that too. And why are you in such a hurry to see the Lord? I told you, I don't want to tell it 2 times. Do you think I'd make such a fuss over something trivial? If what I'm thinking is real, there might be war. It was like cold water started pouring into me, and my head started throbbing. Boy, this is not a matter to be taken lightly. Are you sure? As I said, I hope I'm not, but I'm pretty sure. A war, the peace didn't even last 2 decades. King Robert's rebellion ended in 272, and are we really going to have another war? POV Ned Stark. Why do you think there is going to be a war? Ironborns, they are stealing most of the trees in the forest from Blazing Water Bay to the end of Stony Shore, and they do this in broad daylight without hesitation. How is it that we don't know this? What was House Riswell doing? Roderick, send word to Roderick Riswell to investigate this. Right away, my lord. Aylmer excitedly intervened. Wait. My lord, we shouldn't send word to the Riswells. There are 2 possibilities, either the Riswells betrayed the North, or there are traitors among the Riswells' retainers. Either way, if we send word, it will alert the Ironborns, and they are not there anymore. I have left some scouts around the area, and if they come back, they will send word to me. It was a big surprise. He has men working for him, and he sent 2 men to train in the barrack a year ago too. Is he really 12 name day old? My sons still do nothing other than go hunting and racing. Here he is, creating scouts on the other side of the North. It was a significant accomplishment for a child, but it was not proper. I haven't even knighted him yet, but he acts like a noble. You have established a scouting network in another lord's land. Not per se, my lord, I have saved many men around that area from bandits, as Sir Roderick informed you. Yes, I have aware of your accomplishments. Some of them are the relatives of the fishermen and villagers from coastal villages because it was an emergency situation, and we needed an early warning against Ironborns. I have left a few ravens in some villagers' hands so they can send a message if they see any Ironborns ship traveling up north. My lord, I'm not arrogant enough to establish something like that without your permission. With such quick thinking and wit, this boy is born to be a lord. I have decided I'm going to knight him as a reward for all of his accomplishments. But why are they stealing trees? I can understand them riding our coast while posing as pirates, but they never stole trees before. As we know of, my lord, maybe this was going for moons as for the trees. Why would an Ironborn need wood? Of course, for ships. Roderick said. They already have the 2nd biggest fleet after the Royal Fleet. Why would they need that many for raiding? Aylmer smirked and said. For raiding, they wouldn't need it, but you are thinking like a Westerosi, not as an Ironborn. My lord. Who are they? Raiders, slavers, and murderers. That moment, it hit me. Rebellion. But why would they? Yes, from time to time, they would raid and start wars with the other regions, but why would they rebel? Are they getting ready to hit North, Westerlands, and the Reach? From the Winterfell library, I remember reading Greyjoys didn't join the rebellion or the Targaryen. They didn't lose any men, but the kingdom lost many. Almost all regions lost half of their men. He paused a little and asked hesitantly. My lord, I would like to speak freely if you will allow it. I signaled him to go ahead. Crown is weak. While I was traveling, I heard from people how our king lives his life neglecting his royal duties and living in debauchery. This does not reflect strength or confidence. There should be a limit to a person's genius. Sometimes I'm frightened by the intellect he shows. Am I raising a hungry dire wolf in my house? But the child never showed me anything other than loyalty. Even in this case, as soon as he learned what had happened, he did his best to bring me the news. At that moment, Roderick said. We should send word to the king so he can investigate and prepare for it. Sir Roderick, it won't make any difference. They didn't decide to rebel yesterday. If they are not idiots, they will mount an attack against Westerlands and our coastal lands. The second word gets out. Rather than thinking about the king first, we should get ready ourselves. Then when we are ready, we can send word. If we do the other way around, they will be on top of us while we are unprepared. He stopped for a second and continued. For once, we shouldn't be the tip of the spear. For once, we should think about our own people. South only comes to us when they need us. Did they ever send help to us when we were starving? Full of anger, he said. All they do is exploit our suffering for their own gain. Why should we bleed for them again? My lord, I know you are an honorable man, the most honorable man I know of, but before you are an honorable man, you are our lord, please put the north first. Chapter 86. 286 AC. Ermer's words and explanations made some sense, but it makes no sense to act immediately on the word of a single child even if everything he said was true. Should I prepare the north before telling Robert? If I did that, I would be breaking my vow. It means I have betrayed my king and my friend. I cannot do that. Ermer, although I believe what you're saying, I can't act until others confirm this. Roderick, send your best scouts to investigate Blazewater Bay and Stony Shore. POVMC. A complete waste of time, but I can understand the Lord. No matter how much he trusts me, he cannot start war preparations on the words of a child. If the roads were open, it would take about a month for the scouts to go there, but the roads are covered with about 1 meter of snow, and it is not possible for them to go over the rills in this weather. It is impossible for ordinary people to cross the mountains as I did, they will freeze. So, they have to go over Barrowton using King's Road. It takes them about 2 to 3 months just to reach the coastal areas. They don't have magic powers like me. So it will take them about 3 months to explore the entire coastline because they can't search from a bird's eye view. Moving through the forests in this weather will be torture for them. It will take them at least 9 months to a year to bring back the news in this time. Wet Rats would have done many more wood runs along the coast after that. Whatever I said didn't reach Lord Stark's ears, and he was adamant in his opinion and wanted to wait for the scouts. He sent me out, and they continued talking. The next day I met with Rob and John. They had grown up a bit. Their talks started changing from swords and fighting to racing, hunting, and girls. Puberty was a bitch, and I couldn't say I was looking forward to experiencing it a second time after catching up and some sword fighting. They got bored because I wiped the floors with them while Rob was on the ground taking deep breaths. He abruptly stood up and said, I bow before the mighty Ermer Drazzle, the bane and destroyer of bandits. Protector of the small folk. I did a fake bow and said, fuck you kindly, my lord. Did you just debase my son and your young lord, commoner? I have no idea where it came from, but Lady Catelyn suddenly appeared beside us, and Rob quickly straightened himself up. Meanwhile, John was slowly escaping to the side to be inconspicuous, and John could see clearly that Lady Stark's wrath was directed at me. Rob tried to defend me by saying, Mother, we were messing around and playing, please don't take anything said seriously. Lady Stark looked at John and me with disdain and said, I'm already angry at the people you've already kept by your side, and I can't understand why your father would allow you to befriend these bastards. A bastard and a commoner are not suitable friends for the future lord. I met Lady Stark's gaze defiantly as John lowered his head sadly, looking for a hole to enter. I asked you a question, commoner. I heard your father was a bastard, too. Humph, the bastard's son is of unclean blood. After all guards sees this common thug, it is a speck of dirt in the name of knights for you to be a squire. While the guards around us started to surround me, I couldn't contain the anger that rose like boiling water, and suddenly I lost control of my mana and shouted, My lady! My shout was no different than thunder. As my voice was mixed with mana, that shout shook all of Winterfell. I could see Lady Stark and the guards around me getting goosebumps, and it was like I could see their bones tremble. Everyone was frozen like a statue, and many people were slowly gathering where we were because of the ruckus. My lady, you can rant about me all you want, I would never disrespect you because you are my friend's mother and Lady of Winterfell, but if you try to dishonor my father I will not stay silent. I could see that she was red with anger. Such an insolence. Guards, what are you waiting for? Arrest him and punish him for disrespecting the Lord's family. POV Lady Stark. How can a child have such a terrifying voice? Being a bastard and having a bastard's blood is a sin. As the Seven said, it's not enough for me to be careful so that a bastard doesn't steal what my son deserves. I also have to stay on guard because of this monster. How can a 12-named-day-old kid kill hundreds of bandits? Even Dragon Knight and Sir Arthur Dane weren't such great warriors at this age. This was a great opportunity. Before I missed this opportunity, I had to take him down a few pegs. What is the punishment for such a crime? The guard next to me said hesitantly. 10 floggings or lashing, my lady, but Lord Stark has to decide this. I knew for sure that Ned would not impose a severe punishment on this bastard's blood. We can't keep bothering him with the punishment of a commoner when Lord Stark has more important matters to do, and in his absence, it's up to me to punish the wicked. After I said that, the commoner said, If you let me say my piece, I will accept 20 lashings. He was still defiant. I started to hate him with everything I had, but he was overestimating his physical prowess. After a few lashings, he will beg it to be stopped. I allow it. POVMC. I continued to infuse my voice with mana. It was like I was talking through a megaphone. This is the North. The Seven has no voice here. The Lord might have built a September so his wife could pray, but it does not mean we, the believers of old gods, had welcomed the corrupt seven here. Some of the crowd started to cheer in agreement. Seven has no place here. In the north and in the eyes of old gods, there is no difference between a trueborn and baseborn because they didn't want to be born, yes, because honor and old gods demand we stay true to our spouses, but it never meant that being a bastard is a sin. At this moment, Roderick and Lord Stark came to the training grounds and said, "For the love of old gods, what the hell is going on here?" Chapter 87 286 AC. One of the guards informed Lord what was happening, and he was looking at Lady Stark and me furiously. "I understand what's going on here, and I'll give the necessary punishments later." When he said that, Lady Stark intervened and said, "Ned, he already confessed his crime and accepted his punishment." He turned and looked at me in a questioning manner. "Yes, my lord, I accepted the said crime on the condition of saying what I have to say." At this time, other Stark children had come too. I turned to Sansa and said, "Sansa, do you remember what Septa Mordane said to you about the old gods and northern ladies 2 years ago? I had told you to relay her words to Lord Stark, but it looks like you forgot to do it." At first, she looked at my face, confused, as if she didn't understand what I was saying, but after a few seconds, she must have remembered what had happened because her facial expression suddenly changed. "Yes, I remember now, and I had forgotten to tell father about that. That figures why I saw her in the keep today. If Lord Stark knew the opinion of Septa Mordane, he would never allow such a vile creature to come close to his children ever again." Lady Stark cried out in anger. "How dare you insult the servants of the Seven?" This time I infused my voice with more mana and said, "My lady, I and everyone here don't care what the Seven and their servant think." Everyone around me trembled a bit, and Lord Stark looked a bit shaken too. "My good Lady Stark, I keep telling you we don't care about the Seven, but you keep insisting we have to. We, as the North, would rather die than allow the wretched Seven and their greedy, silk-clothed and zealot servants to enter our North. The only reason nobody said anything to you is because of our Lord Stark and not because we opened our hearts to the Seven." Everyone in the crowd, including the knight and the nobles, started to nod their head in approval or started cheering for old gods. "My lord, do you know what our good Septa Mordane teaches your daughters? She tells them that any woman picking up a weapon or standing around a training ground are tree-hugging barbarians. What does this make Lady Maege Mormont and every other warrior woman of the North?" Angry voices began to rise from the crowd, and I continued. "The greedy and zealot believers of the Seven can say whatever they want about the old gods right under our nose, under our Lord's roof. But we, the people of this proud land, must hold our tongue about those wretches. My lady, while your greedy silk-clothed septa and septons collect donations for doing a whole lot of nothing, do you know someone calling himself the priest of the old gods who cures the sick and saves their lives while getting nothing in return? What did the Seven do for their followers ever? Did they cure the sick, or did they protect the weak? If Druid Emrys acted as the priest of the old gods, I, Ermir acted as the old god's sword and protected the weak in my journeys in the name of the old gods and Lord Stark. Did I ask anything in return? Never. Because it is our duty to smite the vile creatures to protect the good people of the North." All the knights and soldiers started to cheer in a deafening sound. POV Lord Stark. I wonder if I'm making a mistake by raising this child. Although he was now speaking aggressively toward the Lady of Winterfell, let alone the knights and soldiers, even the nobles cheered at his side with infectious enthusiasm. He made all of Winterfell the enemy of the Seven in a few minutes of conversation over here. If Catelyn pressures more to punish him, she will garner backlash rather than support from everyone, and she doesn't even realize that if what he said is true, even I want to punish the Septa, and I fully know what he is trying to do. By stirring everyone up, he is waiting for Catelyn to step back and withdraw her sentence. If he pushes a little more, he'll get it. But also, everything he says makes sense, and if what he says is what he really feels, as long as we are the defender of the old gods, he is entirely loyal to the North and House Stark. I looked at Sansa and said, "Is what he said true?" "Yes, father, that is what she said." After that, she told me what other things the Septa said about the northern people and the old gods. I was baffled. It looks like this old spinster bitch thought herself untouchable because she is a Septa and endlessly yapped about the North and how we sucked compared to the South. Guards. Find Septa Mordane and give her 10 hard lashings for disrespecting the nobles and the old gods. After that, put her ass in a cart, and I meant a cart, not a carriage. Sent her back to her beloved South to never return to the North. She is banished. Actually, every Septon and Septa in Winterfell is banished from now on. Lady Alara Castle and Maester Luwin will be responsible for girls' education. I turned to Arya and said, "As promised, when we are out of winter, I'm going to find you a proper sword instructor. Until then, Roderick will look after your training. At that moment, Sansa jumped in and said, Father, if you are going to let Arya learn the sword, then I want to learn archery. It was a surprising turn of events, but I allowed it to. I thought she wasn't interested in anything physical, and it looked like I was wrong. Catelyn came close to me and said in a whispering voice, Ned, how could you do that? How could you banish the Septas and Septons and then allow our daughters to act in such unladylike manners? Cat, you need to learn and get used to it. This is the North, it is not the Riverlands. You are the Lady of Winterfell, and we are the believers of old gods. Every one of my children will be one too. All this time, I thought they were only educating our children on the ethics of nobles. I would have kicked them long before if I knew they were trying to poison them against the old gods. I paused a bit and said, and stop trying to push for a lashing. I'm not going to lash him, and I will give him a more proper punishment later. Chapter 88 286 AC POV Lord Stark. I wasn't happy with how Aemir acted in this situation. Either I tried to defuse the situation by saying, we all know how loyal and devoted of a person Aemir is, but he is still a child, and children do sometimes make a mistake. We can't always lash them, but he can't go unpunished either, so I will punish him properly. Because most people were admiring Aemir right now, almost everyone was happy with my decision. But at that moment, Aemir said, my lord, I can't accept that. I promised to accept the lashing, and Lady Stark allowed me to speak freely. It would be an utterly craven act if I couldn't keep my promise while she kept hers. A true Northerner's word is equal to their lives, so I want to take that punishment if my lord allows it. I was utterly wrong about Aemir's purpose. He wasn't trying to dodge punishment. His real goal was to make himself a hero in everyone's eyes by pushing Catelyn to punish him, and by favoring him. I helped him get what he really wanted in a more courageous and dignified way. If that is what you want, I can only punish you. My lord, I want to be punished on this training ground where I have shed my blood and sweat, if you will allow me. What are you trying to do? Didn't you accomplish everything you wanted? I will allow it. Roderick stood behind the bare-backed Aemir with the whip in hand, and a nearly soundless whip struck Aemir's back. It was a weak hit. It looks like Roderick is going to do it as a show, and I think that was for the better, but Aemir said in a loud voice. POV MC. I didn't even feel the first strike because I had used almost half of my mana to strengthen my back and block my pain receptors as much as possible, but I could not turn this into a spell, so it wasted so much mana for so little return. For this situation, it was worth it, I said in a loud voice. Sir Roderick, are you trying to insult me by not using all of your power? Everyone is watching, so be just and use real strength. The next whip hit me with all his might, and a muffled groan escaped my mouth. That's Moralka T. And he said, boy, I told you so many times that long tongue of yours would get you in trouble. I had taken all 20 lashings. My back was burning and bleeding heavily. I was a few minutes away from passing out, but I still didn't milk all of the things I could get from this moment. After they freed my hands from the chains, I turned to the big crowd of knights and soldiers. I didn't have much strength left, so I used the rest of my mana to strengthen my body and, especially, my legs until I was left with 10 mana. I raised both of my hands to the air after infusing the rest of my mana into my voice and shouted, for the old gods and the north. Everyone in the training grounds raised their hand and chanted with me. For the old gods and the north. POV Lord Stark. Even I could feel the tingling running up my spine to the nape of my neck. I had goosebumps, and I didn't have to look to know every knight and soldier was under the spell of this 12-named day child. From this day onward, he was a hero, an exemplary knight. Even though he wasn't one yet, he was holding his hands up like a statue, and at that moment, Roderick said, he is unconscious, my lord. How much more impressive can someone get? He passed out while standing. POV MC. I was in the infirmary at the training ground when I came to myself. My back was on fire, and the pain I felt was so high I immediately cast the Valhentor, the aspect of Ox. Buff. It gave a small buff to my pain tolerance as it increased my stamina from all the training in the space. I had died many times and lost many limbs. The lashing was less painful than losing an arm or getting stabbed in the gut, which was one of the reasons I let them lash me. I knew my pain tolerance was higher than an ordinary person. Seeing me wake up, Maester Luwin came up to me and said, I have never seen someone this smart act so stupidly. What were you thinking defying Lady Stark about the Seven? He really is a bookworm for someone so bright. He has no idea how to manipulate the masses and how to stir them up. Don't get me wrong, he is a brilliant man. He was able to figure out how my smoke bombs are made. I knew I wouldn't be able to profit from them in the long run, but I thought I would be able to earn at least 1,000 gold dragons, but Maester managed to figure them out early, and I could only earn 800. I might have been whipped 20 times, but it was worth it with this. I was a champion of the old gods even though Lord Stark spared me from lashing by accepting the punishment just because I gave my word. I became honorable and trustworthy, and my word was gold from now on. A 12-named child took 20 lashings without making any noise in the eyes of the people of Winterfell. This was not Lady Stark's punishment in their eyes. The Seven had given this punishment, and it was the Seven who held the whip, not Sir Roderick. I was waiting for Aunt Breeze to leave my room, and she was cursing in a whispering voice to the Seven and Lady Stark for my whipping at the same time. She was also trying to make me comfortable in my bed. As soon as she left my room, I stood up in pain and tucked my chair behind the door. I didn't want anyone to break into my room while I was healing myself. I sat on my bed and started casting Aberuklo, Life Bloom, on myself. After casting Aberuklo, Life Bloom, I was able to close up the wounds. It was going to leave scars, but at least the wounds had developed scabs because it is closed and I used a healing spell, it wouldn't get infected. Chapter 89 286 AC. It has been a week since my punishment. I have been in my room, spending my time in the training space so people wouldn't get suspicious of me. I kept acting like I was still hurt. I contacted all of my familiars to get a mission update from them. Poe and Erebus were keeping watch at sea, and Wet Rats had come one more time for wood, and they were able to raise the number of their murder to 60 each. Lyca and Barris were able to raise their packs too. Lyca was able to dominate 30 wolves, and Barris found 10 wild and stray dogs in the north. It was hard to find stray animals in winter. People were tempted to eat them rather than starve. Lyca had reached her maximum packed number. Immo had found 30 icicle snakes, too, but he couldn't max his packs since icicle snakes are hard to find. When I have time, I could go to Wolfswood and help him. The unluckiest was Sith. With most of her own kind living on the other side of the wall or in the Vale Mountains, she was able to find 3 adults and 2 newborn cubs within a year. The offspring could have grown to almost adult size, but other shadow cats were really hard to find. All of my 4-legged friends had grown as big as a tiger, and they all started developing abilities. They become impervious to arrows, and Sith could move without making any sound and erase her presence. Right now, she was standing behind a deer, and it was unaware of her. I broke my connection with her and got out of my room. Now I was able to sense and share sight with my familiars in 700 kilometers, 435 miles. I was curious if I would be able to sense her with heat sight or promodynes, locate animals. As for Lyca and Barris, their ability was more straightforward, which significantly boosted their speed and strength. After confirming everyone's progress, I started going toward the kennel because Rob and John asked to meet there. POV Sansa Stark. My mother hasn't spoken to me for a week. My wish to learn archery before Aemir was whipped made my mother very angry, and of course, I had some hurtful words towards her because I was angry that she had Aemir whipped. Mother continued behaving like a child and walked away whenever she saw me. When I entered the Great Hall, Mother was observing the preparations. She saw me, but she ignored me again without saying anything, and we were both doing what we had to do while ignoring the existence of each other. Mother suddenly threw the plate she was holding onto the ground, and it broke with a loud noise. She said in a loud voice, "Everyone out." All the servants hurriedly left the Great Hall and closed the doors. "How could you do this to me? I would have expected this from Arya but not from you. I didn't do anything to you, Mother. You betrayed my trust, you insulted the Seven with your action, and you acted like a wild woman and asked to be a warrior." "I didn't ask to be a warrior, Mother. I'm not Arya, and I'm not you. Someone wise once told me I don't have to follow the old gods or the Seven. If it feels wrong to me, I don't have to contort to the shapes others ask of me. I have to live my life as I wanted to." "How dare you talk like that? It is unbecoming of a lady." "Don't get me wrong, Mother. I like my ethics lesson or sewing, but I like archery too. If it saddens you, I can't do anything about that. I have decided to live my life as I wanted until I have to do my duty as a Stark and marry who my father asks of me." "Who are you? What happened to my sweet Sansa? I'm still me, and I still want to be a queen. Who wouldn't want to? But I'm not going to be a caged bird until I have to settle. I'm going to live as free as possible as that person recommended me." POV MC. Rob and John were waiting for me at the entrance to the kennel, and they had devilish smiles on their face. Both of them raised their hand in the air and said, "For the old gods and the north." Ah! Phew! I stopped myself and looked around. I can take the lashing, but it doesn't mean I enjoy it. I'm not a masochist. When I saw there was no one around, I said, "Fuck you too. Open your ass and laugh at that. It still hurts to move," and our young lords asked this pitiful commoner to come to their feet. When I said that, I could see Rob's face become a bit regretful, and he said, "I'm sorry for the way my mother treated you. You know she is actually a good person, but she is very attached to the Seven and the Southern way of thinking. In time, she will see how much of a good person you two are. Anyway, let's leave the depressive issues behind. Why did you call me here? Do you want to compete on how to train dogs again? Rob couldn't help but laugh slyly even though he tried hard not to, and he led me to the back of the kennels. When I came in front of the kennel, I saw that there were 5 puppies inside, but when I looked a little more carefully, they looked like wolf cubs, but they did not have skinny bodies and long thin heads like Laika when she was a cub. These were puppies with huge paws and big heads for their bodies. Cold water poured down my back suddenly, and these were dire wolf cubs. We found them a moon ago while we were coming from a patrol, and we have one for every one of my siblings. He got in, picked up the one with a fully grey body, and said, "This is Grey Wind, and he is mine." All I could say was, "Fuck." Chapter 90. I couldn't believe my eyes. I had 5 dire wolves in front of my eyes, and I went all the way to the other side of the wall to find them. I opened my mouth to speak, but there was no sound, and Rob stood proudly in front of me with his hands on his hips with a smug smile. "Where did you find these?" "My father, I, and John were on patrolling the northern side and found them on the way back. Their mother bled to death after being injured by a deer's antler while hunting the deer." I took Grey Wind in my hand. It had smoke grey fur and yellow eyes. Something inside me was telling me to bond with him secretly, but I couldn't bond with it even if I wanted to. I didn't have enough soul space anyway, and it wouldn't be right for me to take the wolves of the older Stark children, but even for Rickon, who was just 1 year old, there was a wolf. According to Rob, the wolf with long tangled black fur and bright green eyes belonged to Rickon, but I wanted to know if I had enough mana to bond with a dire wolf. I sent my mana toward the Grey Wind, but the Grey Wind immediately started growling and became aggressive, and my mana also backfired. It wasn't possible to send my mana to the Grey Wind. This could have meant 2 things. First, this pup was warded. And the second possibility was that he was already bonded with someone. I immediately turned to Rob and grabbed him by the wrist. Rob was surprised but didn't say anything right away. I directed my mana towards him to examine his body, and when I tried to enter his body, it stood before me like a weak barrier. Mana, it was there. He had 25 mana. Rob was a warg and was bonded with the Grey Wind. I immediately began to pick up the other wolves in turn and tried to connect with them. On top of that, the one I got in my hands was getting aggressive. Seeing this, Rob said, "Ermer, what's going on? What are you doing?" All but Rickon's cub were bonded, and all Stark kids were wargs. I turned and looked at John. Now that I know how other people's mana feels, all I had to do to measure John's mana was use authenticate. John's mana was much higher than Rob's, and he had 56 mana. Nothing happening. I'm just surprised. I've never seen a dire wolf before, and you know how much I love animals. Yeah, I know you may have ravens and a dog, but I have a dire wolf. My face twitched, and I wanted to slap the shit out of Rob's smug face, but it was true. I was dying from envy. I started walking away, and Rob said, "Where are you going?" "To beyond the wall, and I'm not coming back until I find a dire wolf." "Come on. You don't have to go all the way there, and you can always pet my dire wolf." I could feel a vein burst in my forehead as he uttered the words "my dire wolf" emphatically. I turned around and started running at Rob and jumped on him. We started wrestling, and I had to use all of my strength without the buffs. We had close stats while we were playing. A soldier came and told me Lord Stark was summoning me. We were standing in his solar in silence. It had been around 5 minutes since I came and he was reading some reports while we stood silently. All of a sudden, he slammed his fist to the table and said, "Why would you do something so stupid, arrogant, and immature? I thought you had matured in these 2 years of traveling north, and in a few days, I would have declared you a knight, but this behavior shows you still do not deserve this honor. The only thing I don't understand is why you would put your lady in such a situation. I know you are a weird child, and don't act like a commoner." He stopped for a second and took a deep breath. "Most of the time, I thought that was because of your talent, but even the most arrogant commoner wouldn't act as you did a week ago. Sometimes I think I was wrong to give you freedom. There were many times I thought I should have raised you in a much more strict and disciplined way. Why did you do it? My lord, you must have deduced the general reason and the more selfish reason. I did it this way to pull Lady Stark's ire to me so she won't focus on others." "What do you mean?" "My lord, you might have been away from Winterfell most of the time because of inspections, but you must have realized how Lady Stark acts against John. She treats him like a servant or worse. I know in the south, they lived under Blackfire rebellions for years, but John did nothing to her, and John didn't want to be born. If I were the person she hated the most, she'd leave John some breathing room." He looked like he had no idea. "Yeah, Kat rightfully doesn't like John, but how did you reach the conclusion she is being mean to him?" "My lord, she will never let John practice swordsmanship when you're not here or let us play with him. If she had given such an order, I would have known. Young man, you must be careful what you say, and you cannot say everything that comes to your mind just because I am favoring you." It looks like he started to get angry. "My lord, Lady Stark is not stupid. She knows if she gives an order like that, you will know it, but if she uses different soldiers and knights every time and only orders him to do chores first, then he can do his training. No one would be the wiser and wouldn't report it back to you, my lord. If you had to do hard chores like cleaning stables for hours as a child, would you have the strength left to train with the sword? Only time Jon has time to train with the sword while you are not here is when Lord Benyon is here, and this is only one of the things she does. I know Our Lady isn't a bad person in her core, but she is hurting Jon, and I want to protect people around me." Chapter 91. POV Ned Stark. I knew she didn't love Jon but didn't realize she was bullying the child this much. The way he acted definitely brought her ire to him. I promised my sister I would protect him, but I was doing a lousy job. On the one hand, it was good that Cat acted cold to the child this way, no one would be suspicious about his lineage, but I can't let her hurt him this much. He won't know the love of a mother, but at least I can show him the love of a father and start acting like a real father to him. Still, the way you handled the situation was too rash and crude. I have to think again about knighting you, and I decided what our course of action is going to be. If you have a raven about the Ironborn, inform me immediately. POV MC. My lord, could I know what you have decided? You may not. I wasn't surprised that much. He might favor me, but he still saw me as a commoner, so he would not let a commoner question him. My lord, I love your sons as my brother, and I will keep protecting them as long as I have the power, but please do not mistake me as a common pleb. I do not bow down to you because you are a Stark or a noble. I bow down to you because I respect you, and you are my best friend's father to me. Nobility is just a word. Most nobles were nothing more than warlords or powerful bandits in the beginning. The king of their time didn't give them power because they wanted to, they give power to them because they have to. I could see his mouth was about to drop to the ground. If I want to be a knight, I will become one, and if I want to be noble, I will become one too. Of course, I would love to become a proud northern noble, but I will find it somewhere else if I can't get what I deserve here. I was sick and tired of reasoning with archaic men. I might have the body of a child, and sometimes I can't help and act like one, but I'm still around 40 years old. How dare you talk to me like this? I might be grooming you to be a knight and a noble, but you are not one, and it looks like I have to put you in your place. It looks like it is time to show Lord Stark a little bit of the iceberg. It was such a waste, but I had no spell that would simulate the same effect. I released half of my mana in a second, and like a tsunami, it washed over Lord Stark. My lord. You are not my father. In fact, you are the reason why my father is not here, so don't try to act like one. I'm not a common pleb, I keep telling you, but you keep acting like I'm one. POV Ned Stark. When he shouted, I couldn't breathe, let alone speak. It was like a giant rock was sitting on top of me as he talked. He kept getting bigger and bigger. I felt so small and insignificant in his presence. Since last week everyone in Winterfell has kept talking about how old gods sent Aemir to save and protect the believers. Until this moment, I thought nothing of it, but as I looked at him right now, all I could think of was that he couldn't be an ordinary human. Every bone in my body told me to keep him as a friend, but I couldn't accept such a disrespect. I could only be thankful that Roderick had left the room and that only two of us were here. Nobody saw how unsightly I looked. I'm a Stark, and I cannot bow down like this. With great effort, I was able to get up and say, I will not pursue what happened here. And I believe you when you said you love my son as a brother, but if you do something close to this, even if it is the last thing I do, I will have your head. POV MC. The mana release was more effective than I thought, but he resisted it and didn't fall to the ground. It looks like Starks really has the blood of kings, or maybe they have magic in their blood, seeing all his kids are wargs. I understand you, my lord. If we weren't alone, I wouldn't do this. All I want from you is to be respected. When the only reason you know about the Ironborns is me, and you sent others because you still can't trust me. To me, it is all a giant waste of time, but I don't care. When the Ironborn comes, I will not be responsible. I did my job by warning you, my lord. As you said, I don't trust you entirely, and how you acted today didn't leave a good impression either. You cannot expect me to betray my word and oath. So, he chooses his pride and obsession with honor over his responsibility for the North. He is not fit to be a Lord Paramount, and his obsession with honor prevents him from seeing what he really needs to do. I'm really disappointed, and I thought he would choose the North and not his honor. My lord, at least call for your banners after sending the raven. I cannot call for my banners without the king's command. It would be seen as dishonorable and even treasonous to call for banners without the king's command. It would be a lie to say that I am not disappointed with your choice, but you are the lord, and you must live with the consequences of your choices. But I beg you not to send a raven to King Robert. If you want to let him know, there is a much better way, but I don't want to tell you that right now. Please, think again until your scouts return and report you something confirming my intel. However, if you don't change your mind, I'll tell you how to contact King Robert without any spy intercepting your message. If you have this way, why don't we get in touch immediately? Because of King Robert. What do you want to say? King Robert is a brute. The second he learns this, he will gather his forces for a fight, but we will not be fast enough to protect our coastlines, and it will again cost northern lives. 287 AC. 7 moons later, the scouts returned with news confirming my knowledge. As soon as they got to the shoreline, they were lucky enough to encounter tree-stealing ironborns, and I had information on what had happened from Poe in these 7 moons. All of the dire wolves grew as big as ordinary wolves. Today we are to be convened at Lord Solar and tell him about my plan if he doesn't change his mind, and I'm sure he did not. Chapter 92. 287 AC. Lord, Sir Roderick and I were inside his solar, and the scout returned just yesterday. Ermer, I have confirmed what you said was true, and I didn't change my opinion, so I'm going to send a raven to the king. Let me know what your better idea is. He really isn't fit to be a lord. All he cares about is being honorable. My lord, we are going to send a raven to the king. He slammed his fist to the table and said with anger. Are you having fun with me, boy? You begged me not to send a raven to the king, and now you say we will send a raven. We are going to send a raven, but not to inform him about the possible rebellion but to invite him to your son's name day tourney. He must be starting to understand what I meant, he said. Go on. We all heard or saw how much our king loves his tourneys, especially if it is a tourney hosted by his closest friend. He will come here immediately, and you can tell him what you want. Is that it, if that was your better idea? I'm gravely disappointed. It would be faster if I go and tell him by riding to the King's Landing. He really is not worthy of being a lord, too blind to tell the difference between him going there and the king coming here. He has no idea how to play a political game. Even with the best horses, it will take 50 days to get from Winterfell to King's Landing and 60 to 70 days in these winter conditions. When you inform the king, a traitor will surely fly word to the Ironborns, and by the time you return, their invasion has already begun. If the king comes here instead, the first army he will gather will not be the Crownland army, but the Northern army. At this point, all you have to do is convince the king not to attack right away but to muster more men until all the armies can combine. It looks like I was able to pass that thick skull filled with honor and convince him of this action. This was not the perfect plan. The perfect plan would have been to prepare the north for the rebellion and then tell the king I don't think anyone would rebel at the end of winter, and the spring was coming, but the snow didn't melt entirely when raiding and war was almost impossible on half a meter of snow. We had time until all the snow melted and spring began. They could attack the south, but I don't care about them. In 2 moons' time, we were ready to host the tourney. The area for the tourney was cleaned of snow, and the snowing had stopped in the last 2 moons, and the snow started to melt faster. These were the first signs that spring was coming. All the northern lords were here, and the king would be here in a week or so. Other than the king, 2 other paramount were coming, of course, as the king's hand. One was Jonaran, and the other was the good father of our lord Hoster Tully the Reach, and they Westerlands didn't even send an envoy. All they sent was a gift. Arrogant idiots. This was going to be their undoing. Even if we sent ravens, it would have taken longer time than ships. Ships might be slower in top speed, but they can constantly move, while a raven can only travel for a limited time. A raven can only travel 160 kilometers, 100 miles, a day in perfect conditions. And the weather is still cold, but an average longship can travel that distance in 8 to 10 hours, especially for the Reach. By the time their raven arrives, the war might have started and ended. Everyone was waiting for the royal procession. With hundreds of men, royal convoy comes to a halt. A giant of a man came out of the carriage, but his height was not the most impressive thing about him. It was his belly. It was almost walking 2 steps ahead of him. This is no stag, it is a pig, at best, a fat boar. After he, his 3 children, and his queen came out of the carriage, the second the king left the carriage, everyone knelt. He threw the goblet in his hand and shouted, Ned! My friend! He raised both hands in the air and approached the kneeling Lord Stark. Get up, you, you old wolf, I have missed you, old friend. POV Cersei. We were inside the keep, but this was worse than our servants' quarter. I still didn't understand why we had to come to this god-forsaken barbarian region. He is the king, and I'm the queen. For the Seven's sake, how could we go to the feet of the others? We are going to the feet of these barbarians instead of them coming to our feet. It would be a big enough honor for them if we sent a small gift. My king, how long do we have to stay in this beautiful region? As the royal family, we shouldn't be away from the capital for so long. Woman, stop souring my joy, go and nag at someone else. We will be here until the tourney ends, so shut your trap and enjoy the festivities. POV Lord Stark. Robert and I were sitting in my solar, chatting and reminiscing about the old days. My king, I have something important to say. Would it be possible if we could be alone? Drop with this my king act when we are alone. I turned and looked at the Kingslayer, and Robert said. Don't worry about Jamie, he stands there even when I fuck whores and cheat on his sister. You could think of him as non-existent. Seeing that I would not go ahead as long as he was here, he signaled for him to leave the room. Then I told him everything that had happened. So, to be sure, the word didn't get out. You used a tourney as an excuse to pull me here. Since the last time I saw you, you learned some guile. This was not my idea, and one of my men strongly recommended this plan. This way, the first army to be raised would be the north. And most of the damage would be sustained by the Westerlands and the Reach. The Reach takes the most damage. Whoever proposed this plan is a big fox. They would even dare to manipulate their king for the benefit of the north. He took a big gulp from his wine and said. We can't go at them for stealing wood. This is not proof enough. Why do you think they are stealing this much wood? Do you think they are going to make houses and merchant ships? They are building longships. Why would they need that many ships when they have the second most powerful fleet in Westeros? Go against the other ones, of course. Even if what you were saying is true, we can't march on them until they give a bigger reason. If we attack now, that coward Squid will burn his ships and ask forgiveness for building them without permission, but if they show their intent more openly, we can attack. Until then, let us enjoy the tourney. Chapter 93. 287 AC. I was touring the area where the tourney preparations were made, and it was all for a hoax. When the king realized what the Ironborns wanted to do, he would raise the army and most likely stop them from rebelling. At least that's what I thought. But it's been 2 days since the king and Lord Stark spoke, and still no action from the king. So, I asked Sir Roderick if I could talk with the lord. After a few hours of waiting, I was able to. My lord, why are we not marching for the Iron Islands? He looked up from the papers and looked very distressed and wistful. Our king thinks it's too early to act and has decided to enjoy the tourney until the Ironborns take action, and if they don't act until the tourney is over, he plans to make up an excuse and head for the Westerlands. Why is this giant hog not charging head first to punish them? Something is wrong, and he doesn't want to return to King's Landing but wants to go to Westerlands. At that moment, it dawned on me this giant hog doesn't want to end the rebellion before it goes off. He wants a war. This drunkard hog wants a full-blown war. But why? My lord, is it possible the king wants a full-blown war? As soon as I said that, he suddenly jumped up as if he had remembered something, started to pace, and asked himself questions. Is this the reason he was in such a high spirit the second I told him about the possible rebellion? That is why he started laughing at everything after our talk, and that is why he said he was looking forward to the upcoming festivities. I thought he was talking about the tourney, but he wasn't. So, he is going to cause the death of all those people because he is bored. Now that I think about it, a war wouldn't be such a bad thing for me, and I can earn more renown in a real war rather than a quick suppression. If the Ironborn raids the coastline, I could also help the small folk as Druid Emrys. I don't care what they will do anymore. If they end it before it sprouts, I will earn contributions as the one who brought this to their attention, but if the war happens, I will get more contributions as I fight. POV Ned Stark. As soon as our conversation with Aemir ended, I immediately went to the room reserved for the Hand to discuss my conclusions with Jon and told him what had happened. After some quiet thought, he said. You might be right. For a few years, he's been talking about how disgusting it is to rule the kingdom and how exciting the wartimes were. We have to go and have a talk with him. We went to Robert and tried to persuade him, but the reasoning he shared with us was that they had to be made 2 weeks so that the Ironborns would not revolt again, and that was why the war was necessary. Jon was able to convince him at least that we should at least send word to Westerlands and Reach and warn them to be prepared for the Ironborns. POV MC. They sent the ravens to Westerlands and Reach today, and since winter is almost over, I think Ironborns will attack within the next month if they feel ready. There could still be 20 centimeters of snow in the north, but the temperature had risen to around 5 degrees, and most importantly, there was no place left under snow in the south. If Ironborn's goal was to conquer, the time was still early, but they could still attack today if they aimed to raid and neutralize. I decided to enjoy the tourney organized like everyone else and signed up for melee with Lord Stark's permission. Northern tourneys were slightly different from southern ones, with more brutal fights. South tourneys would only have justing, melee, and archery, but at the north, we didn't have justing. Most northern knight despises justing, calling it to play fighting for jesters. So, in the north, there is melee, archery, wrestling, fist fighting, and log throwing. Fist fighting, log throwing, and wrestling are usually for commoners. But in the last 2 tourneys, Great Yon Umber dominates those 3. It might sound like there are a lot of tourneys, but the North usually doesn't celebrate first name days. It is seen as wasteful. Tourneys only happen when there is a good harvest, and it is done to celebrate that, so those 2 tourneys happened over 7 years. I had commissioned a full knight armor from Mycon because I had grown 10 centimeters in the last 9 months and buffed up a bit. I had become 180 centimeters as a 13.5 name day old and had 55 STR, 62 SPD, and 210 mana. When I passed 200 mana a few months ago, I got a few more spells and rituals. Perseus Saget, Flame Arrows, as the name suggests, launches 3 arrow-shaped flames that explode with a 1 meter radius. Jalmio Sumbi, Wind Shield, is a more potent form of warding wind that can deflect javelins and throw axes. As for the rituals, I was able to cast 2 more. Both of them were useful, but the Oath ritual was going to be the most useful thanks to this ritual. I could make an unbreakable vow, but like every order spell, it had a disadvantage, and it would have no effect if I forced a person to take this oath. For it to have an effect, that person had to support the sworn subject at the time of the ritual. It meant nothing if they changed their minds after the oath. Once the oath was activated, they adhered to the oath they took until the owner of the oath freed them. This was both a plus and a minus. I couldn't force the people I suppressed to take an oath, but I could find out who the untrustworthy guys were because it wouldn't work for those who didn't believe what they were saying, and I was thinking of using this on Keegan and Harlock to see how it works. Both brothers had been in Winterfell for nearly 2 years, and Sir Roderick must have entrusted them to a good trainer because they had the skills to be called soldiers. My last ritual was Zone of Purity. As the name states, it purifies the things inside, and I tried this on a living rabbit. And it died because when it was purified, it killed all living things in the area. I can't use it as an antidote for poison victims, but I can use it on water and food, and at least it will clean any bacteria or viruses, but it doesn't work on chemicals. 287 AC. A/N, Airmer's armor is added to the picks. After receiving the armor, I ordered from Mycon. I made my way to the tourney area. Airmer, wait for me. Rob and John were running towards me when I turned around. When they came to me, he saw the clanking sack in my hand and said, "Is it true you're joining tourney?" "Yes." "Are you crazy? We know you're strong, and you've defeated many bandits, but do you think fighting against knights will be like fighting bandits?" I smiled and said, "Of course not, it is going to be more fun, and I think the fights will be competitive. If I were the strongest, there would be no point in fighting against them." Rob lowered his head dejectedly and said, "You're becoming more and more powerful than us. How can I be your lord when I can't even do half of what you do?" "As you say, you need to be a lord, not a warrior. Your understanding of management is much more important than your understanding of fighting, and it is important that you can protect yourself and know how to lead an army, but your most important duty will be to hand over the North to your children in a better way than when you take it over from your father." I turned to John and said, "As for you, if you want to be a brother of the Night's Watch, you need to get much better with the sword and scouting. Now let me have some fun, and let's see how far I could go with a sword only." Squires and commoners must first qualify for the main tournament. Everyone did not have the right to go to the tourney field and fight with the knights. About 30 squires and 15 commoners were in the qualifying area, and only 10 of us could join the tourney. To join the tourney, the commoners had to give 10 silver stags, the knights had to give 1 gold dragon, and the noble knights had to give 10 gold dragons. In this way, as much as possible, insecure and incompetent people did not waste the time of everyone there by joining the tourney. The majority of the squires were Starks, but about 10 were squires that had come with other lords' knights. As soon as I entered this area in my armor, everyone started to whisper among themselves. Mycon had taken 17 gold dragons from me for this armor set. I think I got duped, but this was my first proper set of knight armor, and I liked how it turned out, so I just bought it. When you look at the stats of each, the strongest had 75 STR and 78 speed. I stepped into the middle of the fighting area, raised my voice with mana, and said, "Let's not waste each other's time. Is there anyone here willing to fight me?" They began to make a fuss among themselves. "Who is this smug brat?" One of them stood up and was about to walk right up to me. One of Stark's squires grabbed his arm and said, "Are you thirsty for your death? Do you realize who you're talking to? He is the Bane." The squire, who had stood up, stepped back momentarily and hesitated whether to step into the fighting area or not. Then he sat back down, and none of them were getting up. I turned to the knight who was waiting for us and said, "None of them challenge me. Does this count as me passing the qualifier?" While scratching the back of his head and saying, "Yes, we could do that." He turned to the rest of the participants and said, "I'm asking one last time, is there anyone among you who wishes to fight Airmer Drazzle? Then he is the first one to qualify. I always wear the straps of my armor a little more loosely, so I can activate the Korsambi, Oak's Healed, magic from under my armor. This provides extra defense and, at the same time, reduces the blunt force trauma by cushioning. After the qualifiers were over, the real tourney started in the afternoon, and my first opponent was a familiar face. Hugo Moss, the asshole that kept beating me for joy. He got stronger, but not as much as me. He had 82 STR and 77 SPD, especially in speed he was so slow compared to me. I had 92 SPD. I used all of my buffs, as our ancestors said, you reap what you sow, he will be reaping the storm he sows. At the signal to start the fight, I charged him with all my speed, and as he did not expect this, he was surprised and swung his sword a little late. His sword came to my right arm, but thanks to my armor and armor magic, I could barely feel his attack. He couldn't slow me down. So I continued my charge. I hit him with my shoulder so hard that he flew about 2 to 3 meters backward. I felt like an unstoppable tank. He got the wind knocked out of him so that he couldn't get up right away. I walked slowly towards him, grabbed his right foot, spun him, and threw him like a sack of potatoes. He crushed into the wooden wall and started groaning on the ground without being able to get up. I got close to him and said in a voice only people close to us could hear, "You are not worthy of my sword." The fight didn't even last for about a minute, and the audience was shocked and didn't know for a moment how to react, and after a few seconds, the silence gave way to a deafening cheer. I could hear King Robert's thunderous laughter, and he was saying, "Just the kind of warrior I like, haha." People came into the arena and took him away. I saluted the king and the lords, then left the arena. An hour later, the second round started, and I also met a familiar face on this round, Wyland Flant. He was knighted a few years ago and currently has 75 STR and 82 SPD. Chapter 95. 287 AC. Even though Wyland was a noble knight since our second fight, he turned into someone who greeted me respectfully. So today, I was going to return this respect at the arena. I offered him my hand for a second. He hesitated but accepted the handshake. I asked in a tone only he could hear, "Do you want to see my full power, or should we have a fight with dignity?" He thought for a few seconds and said, "I want to see the difference between us." "Are you sure? You're going to be humiliated in front of so many people, and I don't want to humiliate you in front of all those people. You will humiliate me so much more if you don't use your full power. After watching what you did to Hugo, I know I can't win, and heard what you said to him. Do I deserve your sword? How you acted since our last fight. You deserve my sword and respect." We took our place, and I approached him slowly. With the signal he started sending an onslaught of attacks at me, but I kept deflecting them without moving so much from my spot. All the commoners and nobles without training were cheering for his success. It might look like he was pressuring me to the untrained eyes, but he and everyone with some training could see I wasn't moving. The footwork is one of the most important parts of a fight, and the footwork could be all the difference if the fighters are close in talent and experience. In its essence, the footwork is control. With it, fighters can decide when to attack and defend. Without it, you give all your control to your enemy. He will be to one to determine when to attack or leave your reach. After a few more strikes, I started using footwork too. With it, the distance between our talents became more evident to the untrained eyes too. I was moving like a leaf in the wind, and he was not able to touch me with his sword. After a few more exchanges, I took a few steps back and said, "Please be careful, I'm going to use my full power now." I started a flurry of attack at him, and he was barely able to keep up, but with every strike, he had more of a hard time, and with one more strike, he wasn't able to back away fast enough and fall on top of his back. Then I put my sword to his neck. I held out my hand and helped him stand up. Then I put my sword in the reverse grip, brought that hand over my heart, and respectfully bowed my head to him, and he did the same. My other two following fights were against average knights, and I wanted to fight someone noteworthy, but there were none. The king didn't allow Jaime Lannister to fight in the tourney. The only noteworthy one was small Jon Umber. He was around 18 to 20 name days old. He wasn't as big as his father, but he still had time to grow and maybe pass him. He had 11 power and came to the last fight while using his impressive physique. He didn't have much of a technique. In all honesty, you would need that much technique with that physique, but he was too slow. He had only 7 speeds. I didn't know if my armor and magic armor combo was strong enough to defend against his great sword, and I didn't have enough confidence to try my luck, so I had to dodge all of his attacks, and the speed difference was more than enough for that. With the signal, he charged at me while holding his great sword vertically, one hand at the hilt and the other at the top, so he could occupy a larger arena when he charges. He wasn't afraid of my sword on a frontal attack. He was like an iron giant. There was two ways for me to beat him. One was attacking his unprotected joints from the back, and the second way was going for a war of attrition. Suppose I could keep running away from him and doing little hits while goading him into doing big swings, I could outlast him. With every swing, I could hear the wind howling from the great sword's cuts. I don't believe my double armor could stop such a considerable blunt force. Something might not break, but it was clear that the blow would knock me down and bruise me. He kept swinging his sword and kept charging at me. I hit him whenever he showed an opening, but he wasn't an idiot. He only showed a gap where the armor was thickest. He never allowed me to hit him in the back of his joints, but he was obviously getting tired, even if I didn't goad him. I would win in a war of attrition since I have a buff that boosts my stamina 3 times, but I didn't want to win that way. I knew I could kill him with one spell, but I wanted to test the limit of my sword training, so I decided to clash with him but couldn't just charge at him. There wasn't a way for me to beat him in a fight of strength, and I had to fight smart. Since he started to get tired, he changed how he swung his sword. He began to make his swings more circular to preserve and not waste his strength. This way, he was able to keep the momentum high while using less stamina, but this way of fighting was so predictable in my eyes since my familiar buffs boosted my eyes and reflexes, and his movements were like an open book. I began to see where his sword would be before he did it, and with it started my counterattack. When he started his movement, I slipped into the blind spot his circular movement caused and struck the back of his knee. He realized this way of fighting was not going to work. He must be having a hard time believing someone was outlasting him. POV Small Jin Umber. He was like a slippery eel-like bastard. It was almost impossible to land a real hit every time I got close to a hit. He would be able to dodge within a centimeter of distance. How is it possible this guy was outlasting me? So, I decided to conserve strength using circular movements, which made it worse. He was able to predict my movement, slipped past my defense, and struck the back of my knee. My left leg was no good, and there wasn't any way for me to outlast him anymore. I have to finish this fast. I made another circular move, and as I expected, he moved in to use that gap, but this time, I was ready and did the same thing he did to his first opponent and hit him with my shoulder, but I didn't feel a big collision. This snake-like bastard had read my trap, jumped back with my hit, then kicked my knee simultaneously while I was off balance. I couldn't keep my balance and started to stagger. He used this gap to swing his sword at my overextended arm and disarmed me. I tried to tackle him to the ground, but he managed to get out of my way before I could grab him and put his sword at my neck. I couldn't believe I lost to a 3 and 10 named day-old child.
Thanks for listening.